John, there's coffee, there's pizza up here, there's some coffee in there.
Thank you.
Whatever.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
And I appreciate it though.
I really appreciate you coming today.
Of course. Yeah.
I'm Karen.
Karen, I'm John. Mary, it's nice to meet you.
Okay. From where that?
Yes.
Oh.
All right. Notice is hereby given that the Board of Directors of Green Mountain Water and Sanitation District of the County of Jefferson, State of Colorado will hold a special meeting at 6 p.m. Tuesday, November 29, 2022 at 13919 West Utah Avenue, Lakewood, Colorado 80228. This meeting will be held for the purpose of conducting such business as may come before the board. This meeting is open to the public. Virtual meeting option for those who may not be able to attend in person. The district will offer the option of participating in this meeting via video/conference call. To attend, please go to https://us06web.us/j/89533225776 or call 669-900-6833 and enter the meeting ID 895-3322-5776. To troubleshoot issues with the connection at the time of the meeting, please follow the link https://hc/EN-us//sections/200305593-troubleshooting. If you still experience issues, email customer service@greenmountainwater.org and our IT staff will assist you as soon as possible. The district does not discriminate on the basis of race, age, national origin, color, creed, religion, sex, sexual orientation, or disability in the provision of services. People with disabilities needing reasonable accommodation to attend or participate in a district board meeting can call 303-985-1581 or email customer service@greenmountainwater.org for assistance. Please give notice as far in advance as possible so we may accommodate your request. Agenda item number 1, call to order, declaration of a quorum. Jeff Baker present.
Karen Morgan present.
Dave Wickman present.
Roger Wendell present.
And I don't see Todd up there. Todd had surgery. I just brought him home from the hospital today, so he was going to try and be in. So I knew this was going to happen. So we have 4 directors present. I declare a quorum. Close agenda item number 1, open agenda item number 2, directors matters, disclosure matters. Do any of the directors have anything to disclose? No items. We will close agenda item number 2.
Jeff, do you want to excuse Todd?
Yes.
Okay. Move in second.
Okay, I'm going to move to excuse Todd Hooks, Director Hooks, from being present tonight due to surgery. We have a second.
I'll second that.
We have a second, discussion. No discussion, call the vote. All in favor of the move, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye, 4 ayes, 0 nays, the motion passes. All right, agenda item number 3, approval of additions to and deletions from the agenda. Any?
No.
There are no.
Jeff.
Oh, he is here. Todd, are you there? See him. Well, Todd's here, so Todd, glad you made it. Okay, I will close agenda item number 3 and open agenda item number 4, public comment. For past motion of the Green Mountain Water and Sanitation Board of Directors, May 11, 2021. Members of the public wishing to address the board during the public comment period are asked to keep the comments civil and related to the items in the agenda or to the conduct of the district business. Members of the public wishing to address the board will be recognized by the board to maintain proper decorum. Since Green Mountain Water and Sanitation District Board values your input, we always offer additional opportunities for the public to provide comments by using the district email system or by phoning into customer service in the event they do not get on during the period set aside for public comment. Do we have anybody in the room who would wish to speak tonight? Okay, state your name.
EJ Thompson.
Okay.
I'm with D&E LLC. We are the property owners at 1078 South Elkaya in Lakewood. We're doing a 15-unit apartment building on that location. Construction started about 30 days ago. I learned late in the game that there was a separate permit process with Green Mountain and also through Denver. I'm not completely up to speed on how that works, but anyway, I've been told by the manager that you want an additional study done on the existing sewer lines. And there was a cost of about $6,000 for that study that you would want us to pay. My concerns are twofold. First, we're a small company, just me and my wife, and we're a family-owned business. We don't have a ton of money for this kind of stuff. I mean, we're not complaining necessarily, but I talked to two different engineers, one of them, the one who was actually prepared the quote for the work. And it seemed that this might be redundant, that there was I guess, modeling was done on 2 occasions in the past. And he seemed to think that this was almost repetitive at this point. And that was an opinion. I'm not an engineer, but from talking to him, it seemed like that may be the case. I don't know what's driving this. We did a visual inspection of the sewer line by opening the manhole covers, and they seem to be in very good condition. In any case, that's the one problem that we would ask. I don't know, without knowing what's driving this. It's hard for me to make an argument to not have to do it, but I guess I would ask if maybe that is really necessary. And if it is, won't be happy about it, but we'll certainly accept it. But the bigger problem is that we're getting to a point very quickly where if we don't put a fire hydrant in on site, West Metro is not going to allow us to put any combustibles on the job. So we can do the foundation and then we have to stop. And the foundation will be done in about a week and then we're done. And we'll be just sitting there, not to lay people off. And so if my first request would be to eliminate the need for this, or possibly come up with some compromise to that. If failing that, I would ask that we at least be permitted to pull our permits and get our hydrant in so we can continue construction and keep the project moving. And that's it basically in a nutshell.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Will I get any feedback on this tonight, or is this something that you're going to review and then?
We'll turn this over to the manager and the attorney. He's taking notes. So typically we don't try and do an interactive public comment or, because it's not on the agenda and stuff like that. We've listened to what you were saying. It looks like the managers wrote this down.
Are you Jeff?
Yes, I'm Jeff.
We've talked a dozen times. I've never met you. Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
Thank you. All right. So, and again, I've never met in front of this board before. So if I'm asking questions that seem stupid, I apologize. How long is this going to take then so I would actually have an answer to that request? I mean, are we talking a week or two or?
Well, we could probably discuss it later on tonight, probably.
So 1078 South and here is on the agenda tonight.
Okay.
So it is going to be discussed.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You betcha. Anybody else in the room wishing to speak? Nobody in the room, anybody online? So we have Alex. Has had his hand raised. Alex, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. And I guess I'll be possibly speaking later, but thank you for listening to me during the public comment as well. My name is Alex Plotkin, and I just briefly was looking over the new version of the website, and one of the things that caught my eye is one of the mission statements said something to the effect of that the district will be working to develop the trust of the board, which kind of caught me off guard because I thought that the district is actually speaks through the board. So I'm not sure, I guess, what the insinuation there was. That's all. That's my only public comment for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mara, you're next. Do you want to unmute?
Good evening, everybody, on this cold night. I want to talk about the agenda item tap fees. I would like to make a request that the board publish a one-page bar graph or chart, preferably something that is visually easily digestible on the website, and to have on hand of comparative tap fees of all the Denver metro suburbs. Arvada, Westminster, Centennial, Littleton, Lakewood. I think it would be very helpful to have a very easily seen visual of just how cheap Lakewood is relative to others when some complain or seem to want to push back on any kind of reasonable tap fee. We are much, much lower because no fault of yours, the present board, as you well know, Green Mountain didn't raise tap fees for almost 2 decades. When a landlord or a business doesn't raise their prices to cover their costs, it does come as a shock to people when they finally do have to play catch up for reality, for current costs, to cover repair and replacement, to reflect the present value of whatever it is that's being sold or serviced. So I think that would be very helpful for everyone and shut down a lot of the opposition that I hear you getting. I hear you getting pushback. I don't hear the directors being unreasonable, but I hear you getting pushback on raising Green Mountain water fees to realistically respect 2022 value and costs. We are an old aging district. We have a lot of R&R, repair and replacement, to be done. We have pretty much at capacity. People are wanting to develop in areas that are already at 100% capacity or 80% capacity. It doesn't matter what it looks like is in the ground. The capacity is already there at max. So we have to reflect that. And I know you're diligently looking at how to do that. So I just want to speak in support of your efforts tonight. This has been a topic that you've gone around and around on for about a year. And I'm hoping that it comes to a conclusion by the end of this year, calendar year, where you can reasonably bring the tax fees into alignment with reality, with the costs now and in the future, and to reflect the comparable tax fees all around the Metro District. Thank you so much for your efforts.
Thank you, Amara. Does anyone else from the public online wish to address the board? Going, and gone. I will close agenda item number 4 and I will open up agenda item number 5, directors matters. Tonight we have the subset A is Denver water presentation. So we're gonna hand the floor off to Nathan and Alex.
Yeah, so this was presentation. What we do have is kind of a 2-part thing as we were looking. As the committee got going, it was originally looking at contracts and legal matters, and we kind of split that off, and Nathan has a presentation about that. And Alex has some thoughts to lead us off that I do believe he would like to read. Is that right, former Director Plotkin?
If am I on mute?
Nope, you're there.
Yeah, I had tried to compress my meandering thoughts into another presentation. So I would rather let Nathan go first because he's done very, I think, pertinent research on the contents of the contract. And then if you still have the stomach and the time, I can put up my thoughts. I don't know if I should shoot over the presentation to Jesse or Sam, or I can share the screen. So let me know once Nathan is done.
Okay. So that sounds like maybe more of a A
Or I'll
personal
get-
presentation on your thoughts here?
Yes,
Okay. Nathan, would you like to go over then what the committee found?
Yeah.
You can join us up here and then,
Yeah,
yeah, you've got it.
I'll just take this one slide at a time.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, how you doing?
I am doing well, a little chilly today, though. So I guess we can get right into this. How do we do the, is there a clicker or should I just?
Oh, yeah, just
Signal,
say,
okay.
yeah.
Sure, so
And I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce you again.
Oh.
For those who are new, Nathan Davis, who was appointed on the Denver Water here committee January
something like that.
this year sometime.
Mhm.
And they have been working with Alex Plotkin on getting us the results. And these were done in September and we just haven't been able to schedule him in. So I appreciate you coming and all of the work that both you and Alex have been doing.
Of course, happy to do it. So we had formed this committee originally because many of the rules that Green Mountain Water and Sanitation District has to follow are scouted through a lot of documents, and the documents with these rules in them weren't built to make it clear how they all connect to each other. You just have to sort of follow them all. And this led to some ambiguities that had been noticed across those documents that a need for clarification was requested, essentially. There's a lot of paperwork involved with the full legal review, so that wasn't exactly something we'd have the budget to do, but some of these key areas that people had questions on, which we'll get to, seemed like something that a targeted committee to try to do some digging on might be able to unearth more information on, which then potentially could be looked at by a legal expert. Next slide, please. So there's a couple of documents in play here that we were looking at. So we have our 1995 Master Meter Water Service Agreement, which superseded all other water agreements except for the 1974 Denver Water Agreement. We have the 2007 Denver Water Operating Rules, under which any water district within Denver's sort of jurisdiction, including anyone they're leasing water to, falls under. That, of course, has to follow the City of Denver Charter, which is subject to the State of Colorado revised statutes as well. Next slide, thank you. So when we started out on this, one of the low-hanging fruits, essentially, that we wanted to look into is essentially all of these master meter distributors, us included, have their own contracts with Denver Water. This should be public information. And so looking into essentially whether or not these other districts with their master meter contracts are getting a better deal than us. And if so, that would be something that'd be very easy, I think, to approach Denver Water with and say, you know, hey, what gives? So we gathered Alex was great with this as well, getting all of these documents from these other districts together into a Google Drive folder for us to look at and dig through and sort of compare them to each other. And in the process of doing this, we reached out to several other districts and had several district managers tell us that these master meter contracts were standardized in the early to mid 90s. And we did find sort of a smoking gun when we were looking at the Ken Carroll Ranch master meter contract, where the specific language of the contract confirmed that this standardization effort was taking place and that the objective that Denver Water had in the early to mid 90s when this was going on was for none of the master meter districts to have standardized contract language. So if you could, next slide, please. Here's that part there. Essentially here, we're seeing that they're saying that by the time they finished their negotiations with the other districts that Denver was trying to form master meter contracts with at the time, if there were differences in the contract language that emerged with the other districts, that Ken Carroll would be responsible for following that contract language rather than the contract language in their actual contract. So this to me seems to indicate that a serious effort was made to standardize all of these agreements, and that we wouldn't be dealing with a situation where our district would be any worse off than another master meter district. So that seemed to settle that, at least as far as we were concerned for the moment. The next topic is, what can Denver actually do to cut off or limit our water in the future? This has been a important topic, I guess, in terms of how vague some of our documents have been, where, for example, in the 1995 master meter contract, there's reference to a study that was done that says there's going to be enough water for full development within the service area based on engineering projections, but the document doesn't say who did those engineering projections, where we might be able to see those engineering projections, what they were based on, anything like that. It's now 25 years, 27 years after those projections would have been made. How do we know if they're even still valid, right? There's a lot of ambiguity in the language that we were seeing. And so we wanted to get a better understanding of, under what circumstances might Denver suddenly say, well, the projections were wrong, or, we can't keep giving you water because, that's something that the board has to keep an eye on for all of the ratepayers. Next slide, please. One of the big things that we kept seeing in these documents is this reference to adequate water. This is a key phrase, and we found out why, where in our master meter contract, the same one where we're saying we have enough water for full development, it is also referencing that they might need to limit the water so that they can provide adequate water for Denver. They mentioned it a couple times in the contract. I highlighted a couple of them there. It's also referenced in the Denver water operating rules, where they will limit delivery of water so that they can provide adequate supply of water for Denver. And it's like, okay, what is adequate for Denver? Is this everybody has a swimming pool, people can wash their cars, have lawns? What does that even mean if we're supposed to be responsible for making sure people here can plan their developments and have water? So I looked into this a little bit more. Next slide, please. And so it appears that Denver Water is required to include that language legally because the Denver City Charter under which they operate requires that if they were to lease water out of Denver, that they have to limit those leases to an extent that they can provide adequate water to Denver. So even if they have great engineering projections that they think is not going to be a problem, they still need to include that language. But this still leaves us with the question of, okay, well, what does adequate water mean? And so I looked into the Colorado revised statutes where they provide some definitions for what adequate water means. And essentially, the definition, as far as I can tell here, is that when a development is occurring in, let's say Denver, that development needs to get some sort of study done to fill out a document to provide to Denver, letting them know how much water they believe that development is going to need. This is going to also include, any potential limiting options that could be done in the event of a drought or something like that. But essentially, all of the different developments that have taken place in Denver over the years have had to fill out this document and turn it in, and they're probably all on file somewhere, and probably not in a easily accessible database or anything where Denver Water could easily get a clear answer for how much water they're responsible for in terms of what adequate means. So that would seem to answer the question as to why they've been hand wavy, you might say, about what adequate water means, because it would appear, at least from what I'm seeing with these definitions, that most likely this would involve digging through a bunch of old files and documents that might not even be digitized, and adding up all of these different engineering reports over decades to get to a total which might not even be relevant if the total use of water has not increased by too much in Denver. So that might explain why they're hand wavy about that. Next slide. Oh, yes. Yes. So Denver Water has to include those references. Adequate means that there's enough water to meet the estimates that were submitted when the development applied for its permit. So some of those permits essentially, so most likely that's not something Denver Water's keeping track of, because it's more of a legal definition than a engineering definition. So I'd assume that if the water in, water out on the engineering side is looking good for them, that they're not likely to want to invest the resources into figuring out the legal definition there. Yeah, one little bit here. So in the 1974 agreement, there is a tap limit referenced. I looked at this language more closely. So it had said something like 20, some number, 6,740 taps would be allowed. This language actually appears to be more like describing the technical capabilities of the equipment that existed at the time, and not so much establishing a legal cap on how many taps would be allowed. So, this would make sense given that the 95 agreement references this full development language, which is much more vague than an explicit tap count. So next slide. Next up, the drought rules. The operating rules have different stages of drought countermeasures, which for now, there's explicit language in the operating rules that makes it clear that everybody in the integrated system, including Denver, has to follow the same drought shortage rules. This is obviously, sort of good news for us in the context that Denver can't keep themselves in a stage 0 drought and then put everyone else to a stage 2 drought. They can't sort of bully other districts in their network like that. And we haven't even reached a stage 3 drought ever so far, to the extent that rules haven't even been defined. And so given all of that, it's always possible that Denver Water, they hold a meeting, take a vote, change their rules, and become tyrants or whatever you want to call it, where they could impose different rules on us than what they would impose on themselves. But if they're going to bother to make all these different drought stages, and we haven't even reached the point where they're all defined as to what would happen in them, that seems like maybe not something that we would need to worry about. So we're all in the same boat, essentially, is the takeaway as far as the drought rules go. I guess there's maybe more people with lawns out here than in Denver proper, but the rules at least would be sort of the same. All right, next slide. And so then these projections of full development. So Denver agreed to provide us with all this water. That agreement was premised on engineering projections. It's not exactly clear. I still haven't been able to find anything as to exactly what these projections were or where they are. But these projections seem like they are separate from the legal definition of adequate for Denver. So I don't see it. There's no clear reference to where we might be able to find what this was based on. Figuring out more about why Denver Water would, on the engineering side, think that we're in good shape. That would be another project, essentially. But we would know that this sort of adequate for Denver language that is sort of scary in our documents is something that just has to be included rather than something that is hanging over our heads as an imminent crisis so much. Right. Last slide, I think. We don't have a worse contract than other nearby master meter districts. Adequate water language is a legal definition based on Denver and Colorado statute that it's difficult to quantify. The tap limit from 1974 agreement isn't an actual tap limit, doesn't appear to be. We are in the same boat as Denver in terms of drought restrictions. And this engineering projections that took place, we don't know what they're based on, or we didn't find out what they were based on for this committee. And more research on, why Denver thinks that full development, pretty vaguely defined term, can take place would be something that we'd want to look into as a separate committee or project or something like that. Yeah, so next steps. If any of you know a good legal expert around, you might want to confirm some of these findings because neither Alex or I are lawyers, and these are legal documents. We might want to decide if it's a worthwhile endeavor to look into the supply and demand of water and see if that the way it's developed makes any sense in the context of whatever projections Denver would have made in the 90s. And then, couldn't hurt to communicate some of these findings to other master meter districts who might be interested. And I believe that's all for the presentation.
Nice job, Nathan.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
I do get the sense that it would be easy for them to diminish the supply to these master metering districts compared to what they do in Denver itself. It looks like that could be easily done. Is that your sense of it?
Well, they did promise full development. So it didn't seem like that they would be able to do that without specific language changes in their operating rules. I mean, my understanding is that if the board of Denver Water wanted to change any of those rules and could take a vote on it, that could happen. We were looking mostly at sort of the rules as they've been defined in the documents that exist. So per current rules, I don't think they could do that, but I'm sure you're all very aware a rule change is just a vote away.
So Dylan, the word adequate's really pretty broad, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they did that intentionally because that they could actually make that whatever they wanted, correct?
Yeah.
Basically, and that definition that was referenced from the local government, Title 29, that's so adequate means, I don't remember offhand now, but there were 5 different categories of definition for which adequate applies. So yeah, it's a really broad term.
Those were really broad too. I read them and it's like it wasn't
Practical.
As Nathan kept saying, you had the engineering never let the facts ever interfere with what's actually happening, right? There's a firewall between engineering and legislative, so.
Yeah.
or the legal side of it, right? Not the, well, I guess it became
It was,
legislative.
yeah, it was legislative.
So the problem is, it's not based on anything. No data points.
Right, I mean, it's like the word reasonable. What does that mean? That word's everywhere and it doesn't mean anything. So adequate, yeah, it means probably what Denver Water decides it means at the time they, or Colorado Supreme Court decides when Denver Water gets sued.
So that will be a push come to shove. So Jeff, do we need to, if we were to go further, because probably you just dance around that tree forever with those words. Would a hydrologist know what this means?
Well, there's no doubt that Denver Water is very transparent when it comes to snowpack. I mean, they send us the numbers every week on what their snowpack is, and the worst drought recorded history was 2002 for a year. But now we're stuck in this 22-year-old drought that goes back 1,200 years. So in 2002, you know, everybody in the Denver metro area and every single master metering along with read meters was on stage 2 alert. So yeah, I think there's no doubt we could track the snowpack, we could track what's going on, we could track what Denver Water is doing, but at the end of the day, we pay them, you know, we're paying Denver Water $8.3 million a year for water, and they want our $8.3 million because they're almost $1 billion in debt. So they want our money. There's no doubt about that. And they want to sell us water. So if they could generate 150% snowpack every year, they'd be more than happy to sell us that water so they can make money to pay for their $600 million water plant off in Nevada. So I think, you know, we could discuss it every month on what snowpack looks like and what we're trending to. And what we could project that Denver Water is going to do next summer. And then, you know, the states, plus our lobbyists is going to work great at the state level because of the laws on turf replacement. That starts up in July of next year. And so Denver's going to be working with us on that too.
There might be some further extrapolation of what adequate water supply means in the charter. I haven't reviewed the charter, or in, you know, it might even be in the state constitution, or case law construing either the charter or the constitution. You know, if there's some sort of promise somewhere that the residents will be provided an adequate supply of water. Yeah, there might be an answer to what that means. That's more than just the ephemeral statutory language, but I don't know it offhand.
Which is why sustainability is a joke, because if you look at, based on all these, you know, this language, right? And you saw what happened in California, they'll just tell you, you shut it down except for, you know, your drinking water.
Right.
In a shower or something like that, and you know, that's where that's gonna go.
Yeah, that's where we're headed. Is the federal government has already stepped in. It's took 30% of the water supply to Arizona off the Colorado River. So we're headed that direction.
Well.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
This concept of adequate water has been of interest to me. And during my messing around with title CRS, you were mentioning Title 29. And I came across something there that thought was interesting. It says that a local government makes the final determination to approve a development permit. It may not approve an application for a development permit unless, quote, it determines in its sole discretion, after considering the application and all the information provided, that the applicant have satisfactorily demonstrated that the proposed water supply will be adequate. So anyway, I assume you've already got that. There's a copy there. Does that have any impact on anything we're talking about here?
It doesn't directly affect Green Mountain under this particular statute. Special districts are not local governments as defined in Title 29 because they don't make sort of planning and zoning decisions that counties and municipalities make.
But I think that is showing where a gap is. And so that definition of adequate was in Title 29 too, and goes back to the legislative actions that we should be maybe pushing for is to get a definition for ourselves for adequate. Actionable items for special districts based on, the same thing that local governments have. And also clarity on adequate for who. Because there's a big gap in language between adequate for me, myself individually as a homeowner. And the people of the district, and that's what they're promising. And I don't like the idea, as we found out, all of these projects and turf replacements and whatnot, none of this is saving water. There is no goal here to save water. The goal is to transfer water from me to a new person coming in because we need to make room. And
That's why you're not doing sustainability, you're
It's
just
not
doing
sustain-
displacement,
it's-
right? You're just taking from one to increase something else. That's displacement.
it's displacement, it's transferring the water, and so I would really like to use our lobbyists to get some of these terms nailed down to the benefit of our individual residents, instead of nebulous greater good, we'll all have water, just missed ourselves once a day, I don't know, and they, we could get there, but we ought to have an adequate supply of water for ourselves, so that's something that we can do, and I think that identifies the gap here. So thank you for that presentation. For future actions that you had delineated, in the meantime, we did, Director Baker and I went and talked to Denver Water again, and we looked into matters a little bit more on this full development issue and adequate. I don't know if there's more research to be done at this point. I think they will say, we can double the population in 5 years and that will be fine with them, and then double it again in 10 years and that will be fine with them. So until we start digging into what we can do about things, I don't know if there's any point in pursuing.
Do we have the power at the point where there's not adequate water to turn down future taps and residences? Do we have that ability?
We do not right now, if I'm understanding that correctly.
Yeah, you don't have the authority to make that determination. So Denver Water does, and City of Lakewood. So the way it works in Title 29 is City of Lakewood asks a proposed development whether they have an adequate water supply. And the proposed development comes to the water supply entity, Green Mountain in this case, although you're an intermediary. And they just ask if there are taps available. And they ask you and they ask Denver Water, and Denver Water is the water supplier, the actual physical water supplier. You supply the intermediate infrastructure. So if Denver Water says, yes, there is adequate water supply, and you have the capacity, so there's two aspects there. You don't have the authority to say that there's not adequate water supply if Denver says there is. You could say that there's not adequate capacity if your infrastructure is overloaded. But that's a separate issue. Yeah. And then you give them the tap, they give the tap permit, they give the tap approval to City of Lakewood, and City of Lakewood, in this case, is the Title 29 local government that makes the decision that, yes, you have, under the statute, provided proof of adequate water supply by contracting with a water supply entity to provide that water.
Well, and the only limit would be is around the capacity of the actual infrastructure then. It's not, so you're permitted through Denver, you're permitted zoning wise through Lakewood or the city, right? City or county. And then Denver Water is permitting, but then you have your infrastructure capacity limits.
Which we will
Yeah,
get
that's
into
all.
actually on like 1078 South Alkire.
That could be an issue, yeah, so those would be the limits is around infrastructure capacities.
Yeah.
At the district level.
Yeah, so it's helpful to conceive of Green Mountain as a supplier of infrastructure rather than a supplier of water.
That makes logical sense.
Alex, are you gonna add to the presentation?
Well, I got 15 more pages of crap if you guys want to hear it now, or I could send it to you later. And ironically, between Nathan and the discussion that just transpired, you guys hit on about 70% of it. Specifically, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dylan, one of the slides I had, the contract with Denver specifically has a section about furnishing basically their product. And I think that that's page 3, the ability to furnish. And they essentially, was my understanding, again, as Nathan said, we're not lawyers. That's the ability to run the water through the system and deliver it to the end user. And they kind of allude to that. There is a paragraph on that. And so then we get into the whole discussion of, yes, is there a capacity? And also, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I think maybe the board would want to have a discussion policy-wise as far as having any sort of reserve capacity in the system in case of something like the Marshall Fire occurring in the district. Also, as the board is very familiar with by now, the red tank shenanigans that have been ongoing for a while, you know, such things of that nature. So how much is the board empowered, I guess, Dylan, to have a discussion in those terms? You know, how much reserve capacity they want to have? What does full capacity mean? What does, and then taking a bigger step back again, yeah, to the full development, what does that mean? Because the board in the past has not been provided very, there has not been a very forthcoming provision of development data from the city to the board as far as what the full development may entail in a year, 2, 3, 5, 10, or 20 from now. And so how is the board to make such decisions of, is there enough capacity to support what's, you know, being quoted as the full development in the contract? So that's just some food for thought. So again, I can either quickly run through the whole thing or just send it to Dylan and he can review it for any whatevers and then send it to the board. Just more food for thought, but I think things have been well covered up until now.
Alex, would you mind sending that on to Dylan? It'd be good to have just for backup information. So you were good with Nathan's PowerPoint?
Oh, no, it's fantastic. I mean, this is, and just as was mentioned before that I was a former director, also shameless plug. Nathan was running for director seat in the past, and that's the quality of work that he does. So having interacted with him, it's been a privilege. So he likes to dig into the details.
Okay. All right, Alex, Nathan, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
Well done.
Thanks all.
All right, I'm going to close out agenda item subset A and open up B, system development charges, tap fees discussions. I'd like to invite, thank you very much, Nathan. Could you send that on to Dylan too, so we could have your PowerPoint deck too?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
I've got it.
okay.
But I for it.
Okay, thank you for all your hard work. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, stay warm, everyone. Have a good night.
So I'd like to invite John Marriott up to the board. John Marriott's a city council member at City of Arvada. I've been having some discussions with him over the phone. This is the first time we formally met.
Yes,
So
that's right.
they just recently went through. I'm going to just give him the floor here, but they went through their iterations of tap fees for water and sewer. I believe our district and Arvada are similar in age and size and pretty much everything. In fact, we were talking about what it was going to take for us on our capital improvement plan, and I believe we're almost similar there, almost exactly. So I will maybe go around the table and have everyone introduce themselves to you, and then I'll just give you the floor how you got there.
I can give you a quick, but go ahead if you guys want to introduce yourselves and then I'll introduce you.
I'm Dave Wakeman. I used to be on Lakewood City Council.
Oh, nice to meet
I
you.
saw your last meeting on the YouTube.
Okay,
And one of the things that, man, you guys are going bang, 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 one item right after
Yeah.
another, got right through them, very impressive. And I saw what you did on this issue, but I could tell that you had done an awful lot of studies
right.
before then. And I was like, boy, it'd been nice to know what all that background that drove your decisions.
So we can
rather than-
probably provide that for you.
Okay, that'd be great, thanks.
And I'm Karen, hi.
Yeah, nice to see you again. Jeff, nice to meet you in person.
Roger Wendell, and I was in communications with the woman that runs your utility department. I apologize.
Sharon Israel.
I believe so.
Okay,
A wealth of information, but I apologize. I forgot her name, but we
okay,
discussed a lot of this.
right.
So appreciate you coming as well.
Okay, sounds good. And nice to meet you guys, the attorney and director here. So a little bit about me. My name is John Marriott. I serve on the Arvada City Council. I was first elected in 2013. Was reelected in 2017 and then just reelected last year in 2021. Also, just a side note,
You have 3 terms?
we are allowed 3 terms in our 3 4-year terms, yeah. Just a side note, my father, when he retired in 1992, was chief of engineering at the Denver Water Department. So he, I have a background, I grew up as a kid around Denver Water. Let me tell you a little bit about Arvada and kind of what we did and all. So Arvada, we provide our own water and sewer to our residents. We purchase about half of our raw water from Denver Water, and we supply the other through our own sources. We get water both off of the Denver Water's north system through the South Boulder Canal into Ralston Reservoir, and our treatment plant sits right below that. We treat all our water. We don't buy any treated water from any other entities. We also get raw water out of the Clear Creek Basin or Clear Creek system as well as then we own a rather large portfolio of ditch water rights and things like that we've converted some to municipal use and some don't have much municipal usability, but we maintain those, some of which we actually can use for park irrigation and things like that. We typically in our water and sewer efforts, we do those as enterprise funds within the city of Arvada, so they stand on their own, our water fund, our wastewater fund, and our stormwater fund. And so they, what it costs us to provide the service, that's what we charge for. So we don't supplement with general fund tax dollars or tax dollars in any way, nor do we remove any money from the water or wastewater funds. Everything comes in and stays there. And it has been for a long time. We are participants in Denver Water's Gross Reservoir project. So Denver Water is raising the dam at Gross Reservoir by 150 feet or 125 feet, something like that. We're a 25% partner in that. So we're paying 25% of the cost of that. Our cost of that's going to be somewhere in around $140 million that we will make as a cash payment to Denver Water, and we'll get about 25% of the yield of storage off of that. We believe we have enough water rights, so enough water for build out of the city of Arvada, and the Denver Water or the Gross Reservoir project will provide us with all or nearly all of the storage needs that we will have for our water portfolio. Arvada currently is about 125,000 people. We anticipate at full build out, it will be somewhere between 145 and 150,000 people. So we're getting close. And we serve all of the addresses in Arvada. There are no special districts that supply water within Arvada, with one little exception of one out west that essentially maybe doesn't function anymore. They buy water from us and provide a little bit of infrastructure. We do have at least 1 or 2 special district sewer districts that provide some of the wastewater services within Arvada. So that's just kind of the setup in Arvada. We have always had, and we look at it annually when we review our water charges for the year, what our service fees will be for water. We compare ourselves to other similar municipalities, we really don't compare ourselves to special districts because we feel like we're a little bit different, but we've always been in the bottom 1/3 of both water fees, you know, the fee for service or the water fee, as well as the tap fees. And in some cases, like our wastewater tap fee, we were at the very bottom, and it was very much, we hadn't touched our tap fee in a really long time. It had stayed the same at a very minimal level for wastewater. And so about a year ago, our utilities division undertook this effort, working with us on city council to really craft a water and wastewater master plans. So take a look at our whole system, find the places where we were deficient, and come up with plans of how we address that, which leads to a capital improvement plan. You know, what are all the expenditures we need to make on our capital improvement? And then lastly, a financial plan for how are we gonna accomplish these things. And our greatest needs are on our wastewater side. We have what we call our north trunk line, which is the northern third or northern quarter of the city, goes down kind of one drainage, and we're inadequately sized in several places along the way, enough so that we are not able to allow building permits out in the Candelas area or out west at Highway 93 and Highway 72 at the moment. Because of that wastewater capacity, we're afraid during a significant rainfall event, there'll be enough intrusion into that system that down at the bottom end of it, it could be pushing manholes off and things like that, which obviously we will not allow. So our first projects are addressing some of these bottlenecks we have in that north trunk line system. But while we're doing these master plans, we did them for water and wastewater. And so that led us to the decisions that we made. And some, if you watch the meeting, somewhat reluctantly on some of these, particularly what we call system development charges or tap fees, because there were significant increases in what we had been charging, very significant increases. And really where we find we were reluctant just because it was a big change. We, as council members, we balance a lot of things. We have the community talking to us about affordable housing. Of course, if your tap fees go up, housing gets less affordable, not more affordable. So there's it's an interconnected system. So we're trying to be cognizant of that. Where we find ourselves in Arvada is we're largely built out. We have, only about 10%, 15% more residential or more development to come. There's not the potential for a large amount of revenue from tap fees to produce the changes in the infrastructure that may need to happen. But yet we've always had this philosophy that the tap fees ought to build the infrastructure, and then the water fees, the monthly fee ought to pay for operating the system. And so we believe that the remaining tap fees that we collect will pay to build the rest of the system. But we also have a system, much like you guys do, that's 50 years old, 60 years old, older in places, some newer, that is nearing the end of its life, and parts of it need to be replaced. And so it's a matter of shifting kind of our capital investment from the tap fee side to the water charges side, and looking at the fees we charge from that perspective. And so we spent a year, several different workshops. They're all available online. I think all our stuff goes on YouTube. Finding it might be hard. If you would like, I can certainly find you the dates of those and provide you probably with links to those. And so you could watch the presentations, and of course, all the material that we use is all public material. There's nothing that's secret there. And I'm certain that if you reached out to our utilities director, they would be happy to provide you with the material that we use to make the decisions that we make. So as you saw, we did back in August, it was September, right? August or September, one of those. We did pass our ordinance that's put into place the new charges. And then since then, subsequent to them, we have also taken action to allow some bonding within those. So we have some big projects we'd like to do right off the bat. And so we're going to bond several times along our pathway to get our capital improvement plan implemented. The first one happening here right away.
John, I noticed you did kind of a compromise where instead of making it effective January 1st, you did it later in the year.
Yep, so.
And it wasn't really clear why you
so
were doing that.
Yeah, so let me talk to that, because that was our lesson learned. So that's how the whole thing went. Here was our one lesson learned. So as soon as we passed it, we immediately found ourselves in something that maybe we didn't anticipate, or certainly we on council maybe didn't have enough information about it yet, didn't anticipate, but there's a number of developments in Arvada that are in process right now. I don't know how many units, it's several thousand units, several thousand housing units. And they're not at the stage of development where they're allowed to purchase their tap fees yet. But yet they planned their development, their pro forma on this development around what was known at the time of the system development charges would be. And so then when we raised those, they were in a position of changing dramatically, in some cases, the cost of their tap fees. And it seemed to be kind of an inequitable situation, that here were people who planned on one thing, were proceeding, had their projects already approved. And then we changed the price on them after they had already figured it. So we took a subsequent action, which you saw, and it's really two actions to kind of mitigate that. So we delayed the implementation of our tap fees from January 1st to July 1st to give anybody who was in process of development but had not yet purchased their tap fees to be able to pay them at the old rate until July. So it gave them an opportunity.
That was my question, is whether they were getting the old rate.
Yep.
Or simply more time. to get some money together.
No, they get the old rate, so the new rate doesn't take effect till July, and it gives them that are in process the ability to purchase those taps at the old rate, as long as we get it done by July 1st. The other action that we are gonna take, and we directed, if you saw it that night, I made a motion to direct our team to bring back to us an ordinance that changes when you're allowed to purchase your taps. So in Arvada, we had I don't know why it existed, a pretty unique situation that you cannot buy your water or wastewater taps until your foundation is in and inspected. And I don't know why that exists in that particular case, but there are people in the development process who have their development approved, and they've started moving ground and doing the start of their development, but they're not going to have their foundations actually completed and inspected by July 1st. So they would have to pay at the higher rate. So in addition to delaying the implementation, we also are changing to allow them to purchase their tap fees upon their issuance of building permits. So they can buy their tap fees a little sooner. So it just gives them a little more flexibility in this particular case to get it at the old rates. We took that action, feeling like that was a reasonable action to take for these people who were already in the process of development. Our estimates were that was going to cost us $2 million actually in tap fees, that they're, if everybody had to pay the new rate starting January 1st, it would generate $2 million or so more than it's going to generate. But again, looking at this long term, we're looking at a 40 or 50 year program here. $2 million up front is always significant, but doing things the right way is important too. So that was our lesson learned, was we kind of hadn't anticipated all these ones that were in the middle. And so we had to take a subsequent action on that. So if anybody has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And certainly if you guys want, I'll do my best to put you in touch with our team who can provide you with more information, or I'll get you information from our workshop sessions and whatnot, where the process we went through. But it was a year-long process to.
Now, these couple thousand that were in the flux period of effective between 1st of January and July.
Right.
So during that 6 month period, were those people, was it a matter of water, or was it the capacity of the pipes that was particular holdup? That's what we're up against right now. Is it's not so much an issue of whether we have the water, we want to get it done, but the pipes don't don't move the
Don't move it,
material.
don't move the
And so
water.
therefore, the only way you can do it is replace the pipe.
Right.
And so that's, you know, a long-term
Upside,
process.
yeah, yeah, for us, none of it was capacity, none of it was capacity of the availability to deliver water. It was, you know, we have several developments going on in our data right now that are relatively larger, you know, 20-acre, 30-acre developments where they build those in phases, you know, you don't just build 30 acres of houses all at the same time. So they start, you know, at one end and build their way through it. And so some of them are built and up and done and they've bought their taps, and as they're working their way across their project, they were just gonna not be able to buy the taps they hadn't gotten to yet. So it was kind of the ability to give them the ability to finish their development within their plan. But in all those developments, we didn't have any capacity issues to deliver water. Our closest thing we have to a capacity issue is in our wastewater side, and it's that north trunk line. We do have a 600 home out at the northwest Candela's area that's been approved. They believe they will start building homes there in late 23. And we should have these bottlenecks on our north trunk line dealt with by then. So we don't believe we're gonna hold them up, but if they were trying to build those homes today, we couldn't allow them onto that system.
That issue of building things incrementally, you know, time factor. We're kind of wondering what happens. We can look at a long-term scenario of we're gonna need so much,
Mhm,
but they're not gonna need it all in one day.
mhm,
It's gonna be, well, you need it this year, the year after, whatever.
Right.
And as things are coming online piecemeal through the future, how do you somehow make all that work in a present value situation coming up with today's numbers?
Yeah, so it's a good question. We actually talked about that in one of the lead ups to this. Our way of doing it was this financial strategy of bonding for some of these improvements. So if we cash paid, you know, out of you know the funds to make these improvements that were necessary, it's putting all the cost on the people who are paying right now, and the people who are going to pay in the future. They're not having to pay for that. But by this bonding proposal where we're talking about 30-year, 40-year bonds, the people now will pay less now because you're paying on the bond instead of paying the total up front. And 20 years from now or 30 years from now, the people who aren't there now will be paying on that bond as well. So it kind of ended up being a financial strategy more so than a operational strategy about how do you do it? Because I know what you're asking. It's like, what happens if we have to do all this expensive system upgrade to be able to service this next development? Does this developer have to pay for all the upgrade to the whole thing because he's the next one? Or,
And then we have the timing situation.
Yeah.
Where if you're at full capacity now.
yeah,
Then whoever's coming in tomorrow is up against it.
they gotta.
And it's like, if we're gonna improve it in the future, well, the future is not tomorrow, it's
Right.
weeks, months, years down the road. And so what happens to these people that are on that edge now? You know, granted, when the line is increased capacity months, years down the road, then it's fine.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, if you've got a full line and somebody wants to jump in with one more,
Mhm.
you know, it's like,
Yeah, does that person have to pay to upgrade the whole thing because they're the misfortune of being on? No, I understand exactly.
or timing, do they need to wait until we finally get around to doing the whole line? Which is probably not gonna be tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I understand. We have had, you know, I'm a kid who grew up in Arvada, and so I've lived there my whole life. We have benefited in Arvada from really forward thinking from those who came before us a long time ago, who put in place a number of things, our agreement with Denver Water, our participation in the raising the dam at Gross Reservoir, our own water system. We actually, here's a nice little tidbit. We actually treat and deliver water cheaper than Denver Water does. So we treat all of our water, and our you know, cost to our customer is actually less than Denver Water. So between our overhead and our treatment costs, we're a little bit cheaper. Which is good. That's really forward thinking, well done, you know, by the people that came. And so we're trying to do the same and look forward 50 years and not look forward to next year, 5 years, 8 years.
Or on the other hand,
What's it look like?
we're kind of doing catch up
You're,
or, you know, or behind. the curve.
we don't have, you know, kind of the capacity issues that you're talking about because the people who came before us were thinking about that and we seem to be okay with some small exceptions. We have our system, I don't know how you guys operate, but our system, we have part of our VADA is higher than our treatment plant, and so we don't gravity feed to them. We have pump stations and tanks, like, sounds like you guys do, where we pump into tanks and then gravity feed out of the tanks to the northwest area that's higher than our treatment plant. And the rest of about 2/3 or maybe more of the city is all downhill from the treatment plant. And so it's cheaper to service those customers than it is to service the ones we have to pump to. Currently, we charge the same rates for everybody. And that was some of the questions I asked that question. In fact, as we went through this process, you know, have we ever entertained the idea of, you know, it costs more to operate some of the system than the others, where currently our strategy has been to charge everybody the same. Would we ever think about charging people for what it actually costs to serve their area? And the answer is, at this point, no, we're comfortable charging everybody the same. But when you have pump stations, that infrastructure, it wears out, you know, pumps wear out, they have to be replaced. And sizing is critical and, you know.
But it is a community effort, so.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I didn't necessarily have a strong argument for one or the other, but it was a question to ponder about, you know, if you're operating a water system, what's the best way to operate it where, you know, the end user pays what it actually costs, or do we all together split the cost, you know, and that's kind of where we are.
This is great information. I've learned so much just from what you told us here. And referencing this catch up, I'm going to ask you an unfair question.
Sure.
I'm new to all of this. We want to raise tap fees.
Uh-huh.
We're trying to justify that based on all kinds of, you know, different data and finances in the future and everything. But if you could just give us an opinion or give me your opinion relative to inflation, what could we conceivably increase our tap rates by, our tap fees by?
Our tap fees went up by a lot.
But you could justify it. We're
Right.
struggling with that part of it. But if
Well,
you
yours
could
was
just,
more than inflation.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Because we had been way under,
Right.
we hadn't moved them, particularly on our wastewater side in, I don't know, 15 years or something. It's been the same for 15 years, and obviously there's been inflation.
yeah, so we want to take into account inflation. We
Sure.
recognize that already, but can you hazard a guess or a suggestion or an opinion? What could we initially raise our rates to as a percentage? Anything?
You know, not knowing, I don't know it anywhere near enough. My opinion would be just shooting in the dark, you know, so I don't know anything about your district at all, and I'm certainly not an expert on this. Keep in mind, my day job, I'm a ski bum is my day job, you know, I serve on city council in my spare time, so.
Okay, well.
Well, it does now, but, so, you know, I did grow up in a house.
The speed bump.
I did, yeah. I did grow up in a household with an engineer that worked for Denver Water, so I have some familiarity with it, but I'm not.
John, make a plug for your thing. Tell them who you are.
I own Larson Ski and Sport at I-70 in Kipling, so I actually own a ski and snowboard store. I call myself a ski bum, but you know, I don't know. The process we went through in our VADA was easy to understand, even for a layperson like me to understand, you know, where we are, where we're going, what our immediate, midterm and long-term needs are, and how we get there. And
Who did your engineering studies? Is that in-house staff or
So-
contract out?
so it was a combination of that. I believe they had a consultant, and I can't remember who it is. Again, I can look up all the material and find it. They had a consultant that did help with these master plans, who did some of that study. And then we have a relatively robust engineering team, utilities and engineering team. And, you know, this process was hard. Honestly, for myself, I started out resistant in it because I really believe the value, you know, my philosophy of local government is we should be limited to the things we're supposed to do those things really well and deliver government services and water and sewer and police protection, all the things we do at the lowest price possible, so that residents have the best chance to live their best lives and businesses have the best chance to be successful. So I was resistant to the notion of going in of raising these tap fees, and they were able to prove to me, who was probably the biggest skeptic on the council, that we really, we're not overdoing it here. We're not, we're not going out and buying Cadillacs or anything like that, but that this was the right approach and a sane approach and a reasonable approach to go about it. And our tap fees went up a bunch. I think the total fees for if you were building a house, a single house, prior to us was somewhere around $30,000. It's $54,000 now. So quite a large.
Is this now or an old one?
Excuse me, are you saying 54,000 for a 3/4 inch tap?
That not just a water tap, that would be water, wastewater, and stormwater. So yeah, it's a lot. Let's see.
That's when I pulled off your,
Putting me on,
that's what I pulled off. your-
effective January 1st, 2022. So no, this is the old.
So did it jump up a lot from that, or does this represent the big jump?
No, it jumped up from this. From this, yeah.
But essentially, all of the work that your in-house people did, did it just create a formula, more or less?
Maybe somewhat, but based on our unique infrastructure needs. So the key to it is, what's the existing infrastructure we need to build out? What are those things? And then the capital replacement of existing infrastructure. For instance, our water treatment plant was built in the 1960s, early 1960s, and it has remained, it's been updated somewhat over the years, but not much. It's very much like it was in the 1960s. At the build out of the city of Arvada, that plant will need to be upgraded. Now, I don't believe our plan is not to tear it down and build a brand new plant. Denver Water is actually doing that just across Highway 93 from us. We're not doing that, but that plant will need fairly significant upgrading to be able to both deliver the capacity of water, but also, there's been, since the 1960s, significant changes in the water quality, all the regulations around water quality. So there's pieces of that plant that will get upgraded in our plan. One of the other parts of our plan, we have right next to our water treatment plant or close by, an open space that the city owns that we're going to build a storage reservoir on that isn't there now. And it's kind of on top of a mesa. It'll provide us with good, terminal storage for our water treatment plant. But there's no lake there now, and we'll have to pump to fill it. We'll have to pump in it and gravity feed out of it. But it's another part of our portfolio of assets. And so this plan covers over time building that asset. Now, we're not building that asset this year or next year, or even 5 years from now. That's an asset that will be built fairly far into the future, but it'll be able to be built when it's needed under this plan. So,
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
So one of the most important factors on calculating tap fees is the value of your infrastructure. So do you remember the actual number or the value of your infrastructure?
I don't remember. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It starts having so many digits, it's hard to quantify. It's a lot. We have miles and miles and miles of pipes and valves.
And then when you calculated, you included your treatment plant in that value. Naturally, so you got a treatment plant, you got your pumping, you got your storage, you got distribution, you got your collection.
That's right.
And then you could also throw in that future value of building out of the treatment plant.
Yeah, that's correct. All of those things.
Well, the hurdle, I want to know how you guys got over, because you were talking about you guys had not increased your fees for a long decades, right?
Yeah, the water tap fees had increased, but I think the last time they had increased might have been 2016 or something like that. It had been a while since even the water tap fees had increased. The sewer or the wastewater tap fees were the ones that hadn't changed since 2006 or something. And
So I'd want to know, because that's the discussion we've had, is the justification, is that the defensible,
rationale, yeah.
the rationality of how, it exists, right? But how do you actualize that, or, bring,
Right.
it's there, The fact that you didn't
You
do it,
quantify
well,
it.
the fact that you didn't do it over time,
Right,
it's like it exists, but it can't exist is.
right.
And somehow you guys made that
Yeah.
exist, and that's the part.
Yeah, it was a difficult jump to, difficult, honestly, and again, for me being the skeptic here, it was difficult to bridge across that about here's how. I think for us, it was the why, it was the looking at our infrastructure in it piece by piece. And over the past year, we have toured our water treatment plant, we've toured our whole north trunk line. We don't treat any wastewater, we bypass it all to Metro. But we toured our infrastructure. We had, as you guys probably know, Denver Water had drained Ralston Reservoir a couple of years ago to do work on their outlet works and everything for their new treatment plant. Well, that was where we get our water into our Vada Reservoir, which is our intake for our water treatment plant. So we were not going to have that for some time. So we built actually a pumping station down below that we could get water out of our Vada Reservoir up into our treatment plant, so we had to take, expensive actions to do that. So we toured all these facilities, took a good look at, what it was, where the deficiencies were. And I think that's the team brought to us a plan, and the team and the consultant brought to us a plan of look, here's the things that need to be done near term. Here's the things that need to be done midterm, and here's the things that need to be done long term. So that 40 years from now, 50 years from now, the citizens who live in Arvada are in the same position with their supply of water and wastewater that you're in now. That's kind of the responsibility, is if somebody who's living in my house long after I'm gone turns on the water and the water comes out, and they get, plentiful quality water. And I think that was where it was. So it wasn't so much like a magic formula or a percentage increase. And we didn't actually do it as a economic model, like looked at inflation per year over a certain number of years and applied a factor. So it wasn't just a formula. It was a little more in depth and specific to exactly our situation. Now, the result is that our tap fees are still compared to the cities we compare with. So we compare with, Fort Collins is about our size, Boulder's about our size, Westminster's almost exactly our size, that have these municipal water systems. We're at the middle or below the middle on our system development charges and our water fees. So we went from being really at the bottom to, we've moved up the scale a little bit. But keep in mind, everybody else has had to raise their fees too. Denver Water, our raw water, just like for you guys, is for next year is 15% higher, right? Are you guys having a 15% increase?
1.9%, just, because, it was treated water from.
Oh, you're treated, okay, so it's different for you
Plus,
guys.
Denver Water does charge tap fees in our area. They probably don't charge tap fees in your area.
Correct. Yeah, Denver Water doesn't charge any tap fees in our area. And we buy only raw water, but our raw water costs from Denver Water are up 15% next year. So any of the other similarly situated cities who are buying water from Denver Water, their raw water costs are going up 15% too. And so even though, ours went up, theirs went up too. So our position within the cities is still, we didn't get to be the most expensive anywhere. I mean, there's lots of places more expensive.
When you
As
talk,
bad as that sounds.
so when you talk about the bonding, so you have a future, one of these 20, 30 acre developments. And for the infrastructure to upsize that, right, or create that, then that bond would be on them.
No, so two different, I mean, yes and no, but two different things. So when these developments come, they build the infrastructure. And that's part of the requirements of that. And so they build the infrastructure within their property.
The local facilities.
Correct, the local facilities. If it requires, building, bigger infrastructure to service the local facilities, that's our responsibility. But we have not had with any of this recent development, any of those that we've had to do. Now in our northwest area out in Candelas, We did, and those we did have, and those were negotiations with a metro district, and the metro district contributed to the infrastructure. So for instance, on our North Trunk line, we have a lift station, a sewage lift station out off Alkire that the wastewater gravity flows to, and it pumps it up and over a big hill, and then gravity flows from there all the way into metro system. That pumping station, the metro district built, and then turned it over to us, and we own it now, and it needs to be upsized, and so we're gonna pay to upsize it. But that was how it went. That was the agreement that was agreed to. Same with then, to serve water for these folks, we've had to build tanks out on our northwest corner that we pump water to, and then the water gravity feeds out of those tanks. The metro districts contributed to, largely built those facilities because that development needed to pay its own way. But it's a little different when you get more into the part of town where it's an infill development, so the infrastructure is kind of built out and there's an infill development. And does this infill development need to upsize the infrastructure that feeds it? We haven't had that happen where we've had to, somebody had to replace 4 miles of water main just to service their 10-acre development inside the city. And I think that's kind of a little bit the foresight of, as our system was built, they kind of were planning ahead that eventually someday we're going to need this much capacity in this area, and the capacity was built as the system was built.
Yeah, we didn't have that. You guys have allow ADUs in Arvada?
We do. We do. In fact, and I can tell you about that. We were one of the earliest cities to adopt an ADU ordinance. That actually happened before I was on council. That happened in 2007. And as a citizen, I went and advocated for that, helped get council to pass that. And it wasn't as controversial back then as it is now. Now places trying to do ADU ordinances in places, it's a struggle.
And what is ADU?
ADU stands for additional dwelling units. Basically, we allow in any of our zone districts the ability to add an additional dwelling unit to your property, provided it fits within our development standards. So it's got their setback requirements. We have a parking requirement. So if you add a unit, you've got to have a place for them to park. It can be either attached to your house or detached. It can be already part of your house, so you can segregate the basement, make the basement a unit. Our biggest, the rule that makes it workable for Arvada is it doesn't allow you to just turn every property into a duplex. You have to live in one of the units. And so the object is that to allow people to either age in place or your kids can move back after college and not be living in your house. They can live in the backyard or whatever. We don't get a lot of them every year. We get about 10 to 15 built every year. So it's not very many. We have over time, there's 100 to 150 of them in town. And not every property can build one because they're constrained, they can't meet the setbacks.
Do you require 3/4 inch tap for a new ADU?
So in the city of no, we do not. So the ADU is allowed to use the existing utilities if applicable. So they don't have to buy a new tap fee, don't have to a new tap off the main, a new meter or anything like that. Now, if you're building a duplex, if you're developing a duplex, duplexes do have to have, each unit have their own 3/4 tap. Multifamily, attached multifamily is a little different. They can master meter.
Well, let me go. So on the ADU, if you did a detached separate thing, you're saying they can piggyback onto their existing.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct. Yep. Again, provided physically it can happen, so. And again, we have not seen a lot of ADUs, nor have we seen much controversy over it. Honestly, I watch like the controversy over ADUs in Wheat Ridge, and it's not so much of a controversial from a water and wastewater standpoint, but just residents are fearful that the neighborhoods will densify and there'll be more people and more cars and I think rightly so, in some places rightly so. We have not seen that as a problem in Arvada. There just hasn't been as much demand for them. And to build an ADU on your house is really expensive space. Like you want to build an ADU in your backyard, it's like it costs about the same as building a house, and you can do that and rent it out in your backyard. But if you move from the property, you can't rent both units. And we enforce that. We don't allow people to just buy a rental house, add a unit to it, and then have 2 units on the same property. That we won't allow that. And so, and I think because of that, from our water usage standpoint, water and wastewater, it has been a no effect because there's just been so few of them done.
Okay.
And our trend, our long-term trend of water usage is per household is consistently down for a long time, probably like you guys too, for a couple reasons. You know, Arvada, at one time, our average household size was 4 or over, and our average household size now is 2.5. And so you see a lot of households, and a perfect example, it will be very soon, where my children are almost grown and are gonna move, but I'm not moving, you know, so my household's going from 3 to 1 here in the next few years, but I'm gonna be living in the same house, so obviously the water usage will be down. And so in the city of Arvada, as our community has aged, there are fewer residents in each house, so the amount of water usage in each house is down. And then, of course, there's been all the mandated stuff, the low flow fixtures and whatnot has bent the curve downward a little bit. And I expect as a council, we will take action sometime in the coming couple years about some of the outside watering, at least some, I don't believe we'll ever go make people take their lawns out, but at least some, landscaping requirement modifications for new developments and options for developers to landscape differently that may use less water. And as we see in the state now, there are programs, I think the legislature passed one last year that's a turf tear out program where they'll subsidize you a little bit to remove turf. I expect we'll see those things grow over time, and I'm guessing that the public will voluntarily reduce the size of their irrigated landscape or the amount of water they use for irrigation. And I expect over 10 or 15 years, our per household water usage will continue to decline.
Is the water and wastewater system in debt?
In Arvada, not today, it's about to be, because we're just about to bond for these future improvements. So we have, the last time our water and wastewater system bonded was right about in the late 1990s, I believe. Prior to that, it was in the 1970s, 80s or 70s. So we have a history of issuing bonds to do certain projects at certain times. And then we spend a long time paying those off. And then when it's appropriate, we do it. Now, currently today, we have no debt on our enterprise funds at all, but that's about to change.
Do you have much money in reserve?
We do. We do. We have quite a bit, although maybe not so much in reserve. We have a large bank balance in our water fund because we have yet to pay Denver Water for the Gross Reservoir project, because they're just finally starting that project. So, that project was first started its permitting in 2001 or 2002, a long time ago. It's taken 20 years to acquire the permits to do a 4-year project, which is a terrible commentary on our political system these days. But after being sued by everybody and their brother, including the city of Boulder and Boulder County and every environmental group that anybody's ever heard of, it's taken forever for that thing to happen. But because of that, we have been setting aside tap fees since for more than 20 years in anticipation of that project. So we've been building up a large bank balance, and we're going to actually, that's one of the projects we will cash fund, because we had been planning for that.
But after that, you'll still be well in the black.
Yes. Yeah. And we have adopted, I'd have to look up, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what it is. We have adopted fund balance policies for all of our funds. We have about 8 or 9 funds in the city, including our water, wastewater, and stormwater funds. And we have adopted policy. Tabor requires us to have, I think it's a 2 or 3% reserve by Tabor, but we have a much higher reserve. And part of that, it's good, just good business practice to, one, because you've got money if there's a problem. But 2, we've done it strategically because at the times when we wanted to borrow, whether now it's bonding on our water and sewer infrastructure or water and sewer funds, or previously when we bonded as a city for a couple of road projects, we were able to achieve a AAA bond rating. So our interest rate on our bonds is lower than almost any municipality did. And part of that was our expressed, stated fund balance policies that we've had in place for a long time and that we've always met. So we've kind of taken that approach.
Is your enterprise going after the bonds or is that gonna be?
Enterprise. Yep, our current bonding on our water, wastewater will be the enterprise funds will do that and the enterprise funds will pay back. We're very careful with our enterprise funds to not mix or commingle those because Tabor, we don't want to have to go have a ballot question every time we need to raise water rates. And if you don't operate it as an enterprise fund, you fall under Tabor. And if you need to make a 2% raise in your water rates, you have to go ask the voters to do that. And so we don't want to do that. Now we have, and this wouldn't concern you guys, we have in the past, we have borrowed internally from our water fund or our wastewater funds because as we're anticipating this gross reservoir project, they've been really flush. And so for small short-term things, we've actually borrowed before and then, pay back.
Good.
Well, I can jump in and recap. Because what I heard, thank you for all of your good information. You spent
Sure.
A lot of time with us here tonight,
Oh, no
so
problem.
thank you.
Yeah.
But to kind of recap, what I heard was that you were in a situation where you wanted to catch up on your tap fees. And you went through a series of studies and you did a master plan and a capital improvement plan and then the financial plan. And from there, you ended up with tap fees that were tied to your system and the cost today. So that is exactly the process that we did here. There wasn't a magic bullet, like you said, you didn't just apply inflation or something at one point.
Well, they
Except the
did.
difference is, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We have a couple differences. Because we stopped at the master plan and we didn't get those capital improvement plans, and that's what I've been pushing for now. We need to get this capacity plan separate and done. And then I heard, just like Mr. Tyus heard, the differences is not the process. We followed the same process as Arvada did, except that I heard you have dishwater rights, you have treatment plants. You have 5 times the people, so 5 times the infrastructure, and you have these other capacity improvement projects lined up for future. And I see, plus you don't have the Denver piece because you are the Denver piece. So you add that into ours, you double it for the amount of people, you double it for the treatment and the water rights and the whatnots. That justifies because you're tying it to that infrastructure. Does that make sense? They have, like Mr. Ty says, how much is your infrastructure worth? And you say it's a big number. We have 100 million. I bet it's more.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know what our water treatment plant's worth, but it's a bunch of digits.
I bet you got another zero on that.
So that makes sense. It's not that they're doing something different. We're doing everything that we can.
Well, they did have, and that's what I was talking about when they said, and we're separate the water from the wastewater.
Yes.
They did catch up those years that they did not increase their tap fees for their wastewater. That's the component I'm trying. That's what I heard in the council meeting. That's why I wanted him to come here tonight, because I understand everything you've been saying and we've been doing all that,
Yes.
but I believe we're missing something. And I think somebody has worked that, and that's what kind of caught my ear. That's why I asked him to come here tonight. That's why we asked for this meeting. I'm very curious on what was done there.
Do you happen to know roughly the relative percentage increase in your wastewater and your water increase? Like
The increase,
for example, did water tap fees increase by?
yeah, 40% and wastewater tap fees increased by like 800%.
Yeah, really? Yeah, is that?
It was, yeah, but it was because the wastewater tap fees were so low. I mean, I'm sorry, I should have brought information or studied up for you guys. And my mind's not always great at remembering specific numbers, but if I'm remembering right, it's something like our wastewater tap fee previously was $1,500 or $1,300 or something like that. and it's now 9,000 or 10,500 or somewhere in that area. So it went up by percentage a lot, hundreds of percent. I believe and you've got the numbers there, I believe our water tap fee went from 22 or 3 to 5 or 6 or something. You've got it right there. But so as a percentage, it certainly didn't double, so it didn't go up by 100%, but it went up by 40-50%. But it went up by a lot. But as just percentages of increases, it's not. And really, honestly, it was our error. And really not our error as far as council members, because we deal with what the team presents us. But our previous utilities director was kind of old school. He reminds me of my dad a lot. Who he had it all in his sphere, and things were going fine, operating just fine. But we didn't have actual numbers on our wastewater system as far as these are our issues, our bottlenecks, and these are the things that need to be upgraded, and this is how much it costs, and how do we pay for those by keeping this equitable balance between system development charges and in the service charge. Because you could just say, well, we're going to keep the system development charges the same, or we're just going to raise rates to whatever it takes to generate that money to deal with our system. But then development's not paying its own way. On the other hand, it's also not equitable to say that for new development now, we're going to make it so expensive.
Right.
You're going to pay for everything because we don't want the people who are already here to have to pay for anything else. Because if you're already in Arvada like I am, the infrastructure that I'm using every day, the pipes and everything that service my house, those are wearing out. I mean, they have a lifespan, they have to be replaced over time. So there's some balance there between, upgrading the infrastructure for capacity to pay for the additional capacity that additional development does. Development should pay for that. And then there's replacing the capital infrastructure there that is wearing out, that we're all using every day. And so that's what our process really tried to do, was strike that equitable balance between development paying its way for the costs it makes, and then the rest of us who are using the system, us replacing the things that wear out.
Well, that's what's missing, so like when I worked with this aerospace contractor, everyone understands something new and everyone understands something old. But it's like when you get to the point as a civilization here on the Front Range, we're about 100 years old. We're starting to hit that bathtub curve of we're at the end of life on most of the infrastructure. Nobody in that engineering or financial group, as you're moving along, accounted for this.
Right.
You are always in the rear view mirror where you should be, more forward looking.
Mm-hmm.
And now this compression is happening so quick and nobody has that's why I'm trying to look around for different viewpoints of how is everyone else looking at this? Because I don't want to use the word trust. I don't think anybody we're kind of like plowing new roads.
Very much so.
You've got to kind of have a pretty wide aperture of how you're going to address this and make it equitable for everybody.
Mm-hmm. We're doing a similar process right now for our streets infrastructure. So we have the bulk of Arvada, a large amount of the street miles we have in Arvada were developed in the 1970s. Well, those now are 50 years old and at the end of their lifespan, and there's not development to replace those. We have to replace those out of the tax revenue that we get. So coming up with a plan for how to do that. Now, if we had been planning for it 30 years ago, we'd have a balance built up and we'd be in position to do it. But if you go along, paying just what it costs to operate the machine, but not also operate and replace the machine when the machine needs to be replaced, because that happens all at once. You got to come up with the money to replace the machine. And that's kind of where we are on some of our street infrastructure. A large part of it needs to be replaced kind of all at once, but we haven't been setting money aside to do it. We've been spending money every year to patch the potholes and do the work, but we haven't been planning to replace the stuff when it's completely worn out. And we're facing now in the next decade or two having to replace a large part of that. Well, a water system's the same way, and this kind of the process we took with our water and wastewater system was trying to look at, when this wears out, have we already set the money aside to replace it, or do we then try to borrow money to replace it and make the people in front of us pay for it instead of us paying for it now when we're getting the benefit out of it?
You really, I mean, in the past, and you'd mentioned earlier, which I think most everyone did, they were minimizing, the operating costs to the community, right? If you aren't essentially planning forward and getting those reserves in place, yeah, you're giving, all of the citizens great rates, but then the time comes to pay the piper. So you're doing reaction repairs as opposed, to where you, like you exactly said, that forward thinking and that planning to reserve to take care of the future, that wasn't being done. And it's like, now it's time to pay the piper.
Right.
John, I appreciate you stopping in and
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. It's very nice to meet all you guys. Do
Thank
you
you.
want me to come up with some information for you, or Jeff, do you have access to our folks in Arvada? Can I make an introduction for you or anything, or?
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. We'd like to see the actual formulas that were used because of the, we deal a lot with the actual, value of the infrastructure divided by the cost of, so we'd like to see, we'd really like to see the value of the infrastructure.
Okay, what I'll do, if you don't mind, is I will see if I can't come up with all of the packets that we used over this time period as we studied this, and I'll see if I can supply that to you. That's all publicly available information, and I can certainly supply that to you. And I may even be able to come up with the dates that we held any of our workshops, and you're certainly welcome to go on YouTube and watch those if you can stand to sit through those things. But you can see exactly what we did and how we did it.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
really appreciate it, John. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for having me. Yeah. Have a good evening. Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
Okay.
Kids are going there now.
Sounds good. All right. See you later.
So the section C of agenda 5, we're moving, that'll be an executive session. So next up is 1078 South Alcar. I don't know who put this on the agenda, so I'm gonna.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. When, because this wasn't on the original draft we saw. This was just added yesterday.
Well, no, it actually was on last week. I mean, I don't know why, but I didn't remember seeing it last week.
Yeah, I don't have it on the one that I have. But maybe I just didn't see it. Okay.
Well, whoever put it on there,
Yeah, it was on the original draft, and so Mr. and Mrs. Thompson wanted to discuss the actual cost of the engineering study.
guess the floor is now yours.
Oh. I asked to have it added to the agenda.
Okay.
Because of the request to address the board stemming from the flow study. The hydrant issue is new raised today.
For me, it's all one issue because my focus is on the project as a whole, and we have a number of issues that you folks are involved in, and one of them is, I understand. I have no issue with paying for my fair share. I always have. I've been a developer for 20 years. I'm very familiar with water fees. I've been paying them for years. I can't believe $54,000 for a single family house. That's insane. Well, anyway, yeah, so it's from the engineer I spoke to, he seemed very almost perplexed that
What engineer did you talk to?
what's his name? Terry
Canyon.
I don't remember his last name. Anyway, I guess he's a consultant for you guys. Anyway, he seemed to think that he wasn't quite sure. He couldn't give me in his own words, he couldn't give me a satisfactory answer as to why this study was necessary. He said, we have all the information. It seems redundant. Maybe they're just being cautious. Can't argue with that. I mean, being cautious is sensible. It's just, we're a small company, $6,000 for a on top of, now, if that was being deducted from the cost of the tap fees, I wouldn't complain for a minute. Because again, we anticipated that. But yeah, to come in at this point, I mean, we pulled our permit a month ago, and it's, that's an expensive fee. And it was $200,000 just to pull the permit. And then we have, the tap fees, which we haven't paid yet. We're ready to pay them, but we can't until you guys let us, and it is definitely going to impact our project. I mean, if this drags on another 2 weeks, we gotta shut the job down.
So, Dylan, you hit the brakes on me when you need to hit the brakes on me. So this is kind of a difficult, multiple faceted conversation. One, most of our area, we're over capacity. And we believe that we could be over capacity on Alkire.
Mhm.
I don't even know how to say this, except I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I guess I'm upset with our engineer again, because he's sat in on a lot of this and he's heard these conversations. And for him to say he doesn't understand, or this is redundant or something. I'm gonna speak from just a real simple layman's thing. So, if you've done your thing in the city of Lakewood, we have a form here. And on that block, it talks about capacities and these kind of things. Am I correct?
It does.
Correct. So, and it talks about the studies or, requisite engineering studies around that. So that's kind of what I think that the flow study. And we just kind of heard about this Alkire thing actually from, I think Dave talked about it, and we hadn't seen anything come across here because we'll get like blueprints and things we have to approve, but we started hearing about it. And we're like, well, we better see about the capacity over on Alkire, and part of the problem is down the road. This is kind of like what John Marriott's talking about. We're already red
Yeah,
Downstream.
right.
but we wanted to verify some other issues. And this is kind of around, make sure you pump the brakes for me when I can. This is kind of uncharted territory. We're trying to look, this is one of these scenarios you just talked about, where you could have 4 miles of something over capacity. And we need to know. And because this development could trigger that. This is when he's talking about, you could be that one. Make sure you hit the brakes. I mean, you could be that one at the end, like where it's just that 1 inch over the line now, but it could break the camel's back. Am I good so far?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the point of the flow study, is to determine whether this discrete development is going to have an effect downstream that's sufficient to trigger the stop, basically.
I completely accept that. In principle, that makes perfect sense to me. I've been in construction for 40 years, so I understand what you're saying. It's kind of like the adequate capacity issue with Denver Water. It's the same for me. I mean, and that little block, that little disclaimer is the same type of disclaimer that Denver Water is doing to you for adequate capacity. It's unnerving because I mean, I literally heard about this 2 weeks ago. We have a document and we've submitted all our plans. And again, this is nobody's fault here. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just trying to find an equitable solution to the problem. We want to certainly pay our fair share. And if there's an upgrade to the system, this is the part that scares me. What's the number?
Well, and that's where I'll probably hit the brakes here. That's one of the conversations, because we had another similar, can I talk about that?
Yeah.
Exposition where we had, and it's on the same line, by the way, they pushed us over the edge, and we had to work out, we had to have a negotiation with the developer to move forward. They didn't, it became, we're in this different situation now in this water and sanitation district. This is the problem. We're at capacities. We're red. In fact, we're bright red. And I guess part of me feels bad for you. I kind of have a lot of heartburn with the city of Lakewood.
As do I.
That they should, in my opinion, be coming to us
In the beginning, not at
in
the
the
end.
beginning.
I
So
agree.
when you're triggering a permit, that they are doing a courtesy check with us
Yeah,
and saying, are we good?
Yeah.
And we say we're good. And then it's just a matter of formality, right? You come in and sign and all that stuff.
yeah.
They're like literally dropping Exposition was one, you're the second one, and it's on the same sewer main.
Well, and let me play the other side of that for just a second. In fairness to Lakewood, they did require us to get a document, which you just mentioned, that we did get from you folks, and it said that you committed to supplying service to us. But that disclaimer on the bottom,
Right.
which subject to, the problem is now is we're well invested in this deal. I mean, this could literally put us out of business. And I mean, it's terrifying for me, but I haven't slept in 2 weeks because of this. I mean, I'm just, if I even had like an over under, like, all right, worst case scenario, what's this gonna cost me? And at the end of the day, I'm gonna strictly selfishly speaking, that's really where I'm at. I just have to keep the project financially viable. And I mean, we are completely invested. I mean, it's the foundation's going in. I mean, I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars already into the project and $2 million on the line that we could potentially lose. I mean, if they come, if this place, if you folks came back and said, all right, we want, $800,000 to increase capacity, we don't have it. I mean, it's not even like we have the ability to get it. The project simply can't afford it. These are it's a 15-unit apartment building, a studio apartments. We are fanatical about water usage. We offer our tenants kickbacks if they keep their water bills at a certain level. We're on board with you. We want to save water. I think it's insane what's going on right now. I mean, Las Vegas, and I hear about all these water problems. They're just going to get worse. Development's continuing, and this is what I do for a living. So it's very troubling for me. But on the other side of it, I don't know how to function with an open-ended, like, what's the number? I mean,
Well, and that's where, I was out this weekend, I saw you guys working on the foundation. I'm like, holy crap. I don't think anything's come across our desk, right? And I'm like, I was worried that this had,
No, we've submitted plans, and I don't believe there's any issue with the plans. I don't think there's any corrections or clarifications required. I think they've got everything they've asked for. So I believe that aspect of it, and maybe Jeff could chime in on that, but I think we're all set on that department.
no, that part's good, but
Yeah.
like I said, the fact that we're over capacity, that's what the study's all about.
Right.
Because now,
Can we deduct the cost of the study from the purchase of
we
the
will
tap fees?
probably have to talk about this as a board in an executive session or
Understood.
something, but this kind of like came up on us, just like it did you. I mean, I had a sense, because I saw your stuff this weekend.
Yeah.
I knew something was going in, and we have been talking about stuff, but do I have enough information to alleviate your fears or, I don't.
Well, all right, so let's, I mean, if we can maybe kind of just bottom line a little bit. I mean, all right, well, here's another thing that it actually impacts this. I literally 2 weeks ago, when we submitted our plans, they came back to us and they said, oh, you have to have a separate meter for irrigation. And I'm like, we're xeriscaping. There's not going to be any lawn. Plants are everything's xeriscaped. We are, again, this is we're crazy about this stuff. We don't spend a lot of money with water because we conserve, we pay attention. And so is that another fee for another water tap fee for that? Because it's
No. So I don't think really the capacity issue is not on water, it's our sewer waste, it's our sewer in the area. So,
but for us, it impacts everything because it's another fee that we did not anticipate. It was never brought to our attention.
It's the commercial part of it, like, single residential home we wouldn't have to have a meter on irrigation, but since it's a commercial, you gotta have 1 meter for drinking water, 1 meter for irrigation, based on our rules and regs.
okay.
But is that waivable?
It's up to the board. Yeah, the rules and regs are all determined by the.
So that would seem to me to be a possible, bargaining chip perhaps. And, like I said, we can certainly pay for the study. I'm not gonna try and talk you out of it. From what the engineer told me, based on the master plan, it seemed unnecessary. But if that's what's required, so be it. But I don't want to have to pay that, and then say, all right, now, and thank you for that. Now the study that I paid for is gonna tell me, they're gonna come back and say, oh, we think that he should pay X amount of dollars, and it's. Then what?
So I'd like to tell you, we've been trying to work on this. It's not like something we just jumped on like last week or something. We've been trying to work pretty darn hard on this for 2 years now. So I have a lot of heartburn with a certain individual, right? I mean, serious heartburn. Because it's putting us in a precarious, all of us around the table.
Sure.
In a bad situation. We're not up to speed right now to where we could probably give you, is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Your concerns are heard, and it's probably good that the board hears everything now. But, we've got to probably have some other discussions on what's going on. There's a lot going on here.
Can we provide him with some kind of timeline though? When we can give an answer to help?
Well,
him?
we'd have to do the study. The studies, that was part of the component we were working on, correct, is this capacity. We were already, before your project was starting, we had already identified this whole system as a major problem. And we were concerned that anybody else that tied into it would be, is that correct, the straw that broke the camel's back? We were literally, we've been having this conversation, and then what if? Or what when? And now we're at the what when. And I'm really not gonna say more because it's gonna probably put it.
When did you get your will certified?
Oh,
Do you recall?
I don't recall, but it's been a while. I mean, it's been, we started with Lakewood 3 years ago
Okay.
on approvals, with our first submittal. Pre-planning was about 3 years ago. It literally took 3 years. So 3 years ago, I don't think it was quite the problem it is today. And look, my daughters live in Lakewood. We have property in Lakewood. We're part of the community. We don't want to make it worse, but we also don't want to be put out of business because, if I'd have known a month and a half ago that this was an issue, I would not have pulled the permit. We would not have broke ground. I would not have closed on our construction loan. We are deep into this. And at this point, not even being able to walk out here and say, all right, well, in a week, we're going to have an answer for you is very troubling. And if there's some middle ground we could find, like, all right, worst case scenario, we would, what's a reasonable fee to pay is really what it comes down to, I think. And I'm not opposed to paying a reasonable fee, but from a developer's point of view, and I'm a small developer, water fees are incredibly high. Sewer fees are incredibly high. I don't even know off the top of my head. I don't have that figure in front of me, but our water and sewer fees for this project is significant. And I think it's over $70,000. And now having to add an irrigation meter, which I imagine there's also a significant cost for, is unbelievable to me. When we go through all this effort to, and I say this as a taxpayer, is maybe to give you a person outside of this room's point of view. I think most people don't want to pay the fees, but they recognize the necessity of it. We're with that. We completely feel that way. But I don't want to be paying a fee that makes rents are already ridiculous. These apartments are going to be, we do low income stuff. We do a lot of elderly stuff. We're trying to do good work with our business and still make a reasonable profit. But stuff like this just makes it insane. Studio apartments shouldn't rent for over $1,000 a month. People are paying $1,500 a month rent. It's insane. And it's just because Lakewood, the fees they charge are insane. And you don't get any good, better service. Your fees are low and great, but I'd rather the fees be more on par with Denver Metro than be low but then have these other problems down the road. We just can't afford that kind of stuff. So is there any way we can come up with some sort of a compromise at this stage where I can keep the project going and not have to lay people off at this time of year? Which is literally, we're like 10 days away from, we're done. We can't do another thing because West Metro Fire, was right next door to us, said, you can't put any combustibles on site with them until you put your hydrant in. Can't put the hydrant in until I pay the fees and get my approvals. If we could at least walk out here saying, all right, we're going to let you get your hydrant, your water service, all utilities in. We'll pay the fees, get our utilities in. And as people of good conscience, we agree to we'll resolve the cost of if there is in fact a cost. We may get lucky and there is no maybe we just pay a fee, or I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't think we're talking about digging up the street and putting new lines in. I don't think it's the capacity at the end is, I think, what the problem is. If I understand correctly.
It could be the capacity all the way up.
Yeah, I think the lines themselves, I mean, and I'm not kidding you, I literally opened a manhole, climbed down 12 feet. And stood there with my boots on and my flashlight looking at the line. I'm doing this for 40 years. That's a decent line. It's not in bad shape. It's not decaying. So I don't think anybody's going to come back and say this line needs to be replaced. I think it's the capacity at the end, which I don't have access to that information. I looked at the master plan, but I'm not an engineer.
So I will tell you, we will not take this lightly. We will expedite it. I don't think I can give you an answer right now because I haven't got all the information. And I need, we have our legal end, we have our engineering side of this. And like I said, we were already working this really hard before this even came up. And now it's accelerated something.
It seems to me that a possible way to resolve this would be why not the engineering firm that you want to do the study. Which, by the way, did anybody else price this, or is it just somebody that you've used in the past and they're familiar with the system? Because I don't know. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, $6,000 is going to kill us. It's another cost of the project, and we have these things pretty skinny. So, but maybe what we could. I totally lost my train of thought.
I think it was just an estimate. I think we were going up.
Yeah, so JVA Engineering went out for request for bid through BidNet to do our capacity and update on our wastewater collection system. They were approved by the board to fulfill that obligation, and now with this coming up, we turned it over to them to do this study because it's part of the overall wastewater collection system study.
So would it be possible, and I think this would be feasible, that we could ask them as part of this study, can they come up with initially worst case scenario? And let's just look at worst case scenario. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I'm an optimist, but worst case scenario, what would it be? And I mean, they're going to do the work anyway. Maybe if we do it that first, it would help the board and help us to figure out how we're going to pay for it.
Maybe we could get that number and get back to you.
That would be a big help. And then
Numbers and time, and
Yeah.
we can look into it, and I agree with you. We will talk about it, but it's not something that we can do
okay.
right now.
Yeah, it's just, look, this is just really bad timing in sense of where you're at. And this is my heartburn when I get upset with the city of Lakewood, this is it. And, because it's like, we can't plan, and then they're out telling people everything's unlimited and it's not.
Yeah.
And then now here we are.
No, it's incredibly irresponsible. And look, it's going to end. It's either we're going to work it out, or it's going to end in a lawsuit. Which who needs that? I don't want to sue Lakewood. I mean, I live here. It's just.
We have a great staff here. We have a great board. We have a great attorney.
Jeff's been fantastic, by the way. I've rarely been able to talk to somebody when I call, like, who actually answers their phone. It's awesome.
You were in the best hands you could probably have here. So when I say we could probably expedite this, I think we can expedite getting some kind of an answer that will address these situations. Am I okay still?
Yeah.
Throw something at me if I'm not. I gotta look at the attorney because I'm on.
That's okay.
I'm on.
Do I need to write a check for $6,000 immediately to get this off the time?
So the JVA estimate for the study is $6,000 in. So the way it works on the drawings for both the water and waste is Terry's been our district engineer forever. And so we turned that over to him because we didn't have an agreement we had with JVA. But if you want, we could take Terry off of it and put JVA on it to sign off on the drawings. And then they can install the fire hydrant based on sign off on the drawings. And then
do I need a motion for that? Because I would like to see it go that way. Do you?
I don't know if I understand, but maybe we can we just?
This is our capacity here, so this is.
That, I think that would probably make things more expensive to have a new engineering firm get in on the drawings.
I would love to see the new engineering firm for multiple reasons on it and just do that, but I have multiple concerns about My concern is that you're hearing the study and
I'm sorry, your concern is what?
that you're hearing the number of the study. And my concern is this endpoint where it may end up costing more than you're anticipating for the development, and we haven't figured that out for the pipes.
Yeah,
I don't want
that's troubling.
to throw, I want to figure it out before throwing money at it.
Yeah, well, that's,
And I want to make sure that the timing works before throwing money at it, if it's not going to work in a 2-week time period. So we got to figure out the moving pieces. We will work on it. I don't know how to work on it fastest. We can do a subcommittee on that. We can designate somebody to talk. We can have a special meeting about it.
How long would the flow study take to perform?
2 weeks at the most.
So I'm happy to work with somebody else on this. We can start talking tomorrow. We can work, we can just
Do we have to
designate
motion
a
for this committee?
do a subcommittee.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna
If you
make a
wanna do
motion to
that.
create the subcommittee for 1028 South Alcar,
1078,
1078, I'm sorry.
that's quite.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Do we have discussion? No further discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All 3 ayes. 4.
Did you
Todd, are
count
you
me?
okay, 4?
Did you count me as an aye?
Yes.
I'm ambivalent. You just forming the committee at this point.
We're just forming a
Yes,
committee.
Dave, we're just forming a
We
committee.
can't, none of this talk, I understand that you're looking for answers, but there's nothing that we can say at this point that is gonna make anything better, I don't think. So I don't even wanna,
So,
We're in a legal pinch point right here, and I'm trying to.
well, how about this, if. Again, I don't believe, just from talking to Terry and my own engineer and my own experience, I don't believe it's a line issue. I think it's a capacity issue. So if that is the case, it's not like you're going to, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that this is just going to be put into a general fund or a fund for future use when you eventually have to increase capacity, which is fine. But I don't believe we're going to be tearing up the street and replacing lines at this stage. I just don't see that as and we wouldn't, I mean, it would seem to me that we shouldn't be responsible for, I mean, we have 100 feet of frontage. So, I mean, we'll replace 100 feet of line is pointless. I mean, you've got we're at the top of the street. I mean, it's the lines at the bottom that would, take the most amount of use. So I think our lines are probably pristine compared to, what's further down. So if it's just going to be, I think you could ask the engineer, and I think he could give you an answer, and based on my experience, I think he'd give you an answer very quickly. Is this going to blow up the system? Is it going to just put it at the point of no return? My feeling is he's going to say no. That is absolutely not the case here. And if based on that, I think you would be able, it seems to me that we would be able to come to some sort of an agreement on, all right, we'll do the study, we'll pay for it, but we should, I think we have to establish some sort of ceiling for this. I mean, what if you say, we want $7 million for, to increase capacity? I mean, I can't put hundreds of thousands of dollars into a project that's already, I mean, we're at capacity. It's just, I mean, I couldn't afford to build. It just couldn't. And then this thing is just going to turn into a nightmare. So
Let us try and grind something out here.
Okay.
Best we can on our side. Like I said, this is something we've been working actually for a couple of years. I'm pretty upset that I think there's, I'm not gonna say anymore. I'm just upset. I'm not as upset as you are. Trust me, I get it, but it's not like we haven't been trying to address this and
I'm not upset. Look,
well,
I get this. I mean, it makes sense to me. I understand what you're dealing with, and I don't envy any of you. This is a significant problem. Maybe not today, but you've got, I mean, 7-year-old system. You're going to be spending some money on this thing in the next few years. And
we're hitting these marks now
Constantly.
constantly,
and
I know how we got here.
yeah. But what'll happen is you'll just end up squashing development because, I mean, if I can't buy a piece of land and do my due diligence oh, what's the water gonna cost? Well, I don't know. I mean, you can't operate that way. I mean, it just would never work.
Well,
And
you heard what, like, we're listening to other.
Oh,
people.
sure.
We're trying to get
yeah.
smarter and better.
By the way, I think you guys are fantastic. I've listened to this for 2 hours now. I think it's amazing. You guys sit here till 8 o'clock at night doing this stuff. I think it's great. I mean, you have my admiration. I think it's great, but I just don't want to, go out of business because of this. And I'm genuinely concerned. And I have families people that work for me that I've had to all tell them, I don't know what we're gonna do in 10 days. I mean, I don't want to lay people off the week before Christmas. I mean, I'm genuinely concerned about these people. Have been with me a long time, they're like family to me, and it's a lot of people. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Because you only meet once a month, right?
No, we just formed a committee here.
Oh, so you can talk.
This is a special meeting tonight.
Right.
If the committee, we need to have another special meeting on this, we will have another special meeting, and we understand the sense of urgency around this, so.
Okay.
The next regular meeting is the 13th.
13th of December.
You'll probably hear something before, I mean, you will hear something before that.
Okay, so back to my question, do I need to be writing a check to push this thing forward?
I think Director Morgan I trust her. She's saying, hold off for now. Is that what I'm hearing? Let us go do some work here,
Okay,
and then we will get back to you
okay,
in a prompt time.
that's reasonable. I can certainly accept that. I just didn't want to wait another couple weeks and then pay JV, and then they take 2 more weeks.
We'll be
and-
talking about this tomorrow,
Okay, wonderful.
tonight and tomorrow.
Well, great. Don't stay too late.
We will.
And thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'm sincerely grateful. You guys are doing fantastic work here.
All
I
right.
don't think anybody realizes until the water doesn't work how important it is for this kind of stuff. And nobody realizes it doesn't work. And I've been I came from Marin County in California, where I remember 3-year moratorium on water meters. Because we don't have it. And even after they removed it, it was a mess. So, as somebody who plans to stay in this community, I would rather not see that happen. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Sorry, your hard work here.
Yeah.
Can I motion to add something? I mean, I think part of this needs to be added into the executive session. And
Gonna add an executive session? Or you?
yeah, I want to add an executive session on this. I'm about to blow my lid.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're going.
I'd move that we
do that.
That'd be fine.
So I'm gonna motion for an additional executive session to discuss the 1078 South Elkhire. Do I have a second?
Second
We
it.
have a second. Do we have discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Aye, zero. We'll be adding an additional executive session for legal advice concerning 1078 South Elkhire Street.
Are we doing it at the end of the meeting or right now?
We'll do it after.
When we hit,
Well, I guess, do we need to go into this American Water Works? Who put that on there?
That was me.
Okay,
I received an answer earlier.
okay, are we good then?
Yeah, I'm good with American Water Works.
And then responding to the email sent to the directors, is that Dylan? Is that?
That's me.
Oh, that's you?
What was the email?
We're occasionally receiving emails directed to all of us from our constituents. I'm not comfortable with who or how we should answer them. I don't represent,
What was the email?
I've received 3 or 4 of them. since
So
I
don't
got here.
reply all. I think Dylan has explained this, just so you know, so the violation of the Open Meetings Act. There will be people that may put all of our names on an email, as long as you don't respond or reply all.
Basically, as long as the board is not having a discussion via email, so exchanging emails with other directors.
And are you asking as to whether you should respond to this person?
I'm asking, is there a way that we can all be on the same page to respond to this person? One of us says, we're researching this issue, or we'll look into this. Who should do that? Should anybody do it? I can't even tell if some of our constituents are being answered.
Well, for me, when people email like that, I will reply to the sender. And if it's some legal concern, I'll add Jeff and Dylan. but I don't add another director.
But are you responding to everyone that addresses us?
No, I will reply, so say it's like Alex, right? And there could be a lot of people on the email. I will
Sure.
reply to sender. And I may add Dylan and I may add Jeff.
What I'm
You just
asking
want
is,
policy.
is everybody being responded to? How do I know that all of our constituents are hearing from at least one of us?
You should respond to everyone you want to. To make sure.
Or,
Okay.
or propose a formal policy if you have. an
Well, I'm
idea.
still curious as to what was the email.
I don't recall.
The only one I can think of is Amara sent us an article on something.
I've received 3 or 4, I've seen 3 or 4 of them
Well, I didn't
over the 6 months that I've been here.
Oh, over 6 months. Well, yeah.
So what I'm saying is, were these people, did we respond to these people? I've responded to some of them individually when I knew enough to be able to respond.
I'm just telling you what I do. I respond.
Okay.
But typically, depending on if there's some legal nature, I will add Dylan. And usually I will add Jeff and Dylan to the. I will just, that's how I would handle it.
Okay.
I'm not the lawyer though.
I mean, I would say that in most other districts, constituents do not expect responses from directors. They would expect responses from the district manager.
Okay.
But this district operates on a more sort of direct democracy model as a matter of personality.
And again, the emails I saw are more in the line of for your information. It's like, okay, thank you.
Well, even in that case, I feel obligated that one of us should respond and say, we received the information, we will consider it. We're not ignoring it.
Okay, gotcha.
I nominate you.
All right, I will do
Do we need to motion that?
I don't think that's a formal policy. I think
Okay.
that's a friendly suggestion.
it.
Okay.
I will do it.
You're designated nice guy.
What you might do is just print them out and bring them to the meeting and say, did anybody respond to this person?
That's a thought. Okay,
And just have and if not, just have
I
a
like that.
conversation about that.
all right.
That's common sense in motion. Okay. All right, well, I'm gonna close out then directors matters. I would like to,
Do you want to do Jeff first, or you want to do 1078?
let's do 10-7. This,
1078 first.
Yeah,
because I feel like I'm about ready to blow a gas.
Yeah,
I was doing my very best not to lose it.
I mean, so they're open meetings,
Well,
you might as well.
I thought I was gonna cross some Rubicon that I really didn't want to cross, and I'm pretty sure.
well, it does make sense to do that since we're on the subject. But the only other question is, we were gonna be doing tap fees tonight. Are we doing anything more in that? Or
No,
was just hearing from John, was it?
when we brought this up, tonight's meeting was gonna be around the capacities and the tap fee things. I said I would. And it was about the Arvada City Council. I said I would try and provide him, which he finally decided, to his credit, he came. And I just wanted everyone to hear it directly, because something always gets lost in the translation. I wanted everyone here to have him there. So when I get tired of these discussions where it's just like, just goes on and on and on. It's like, well, we hear the specific, if you have a real question, specific question, go to the source. We all know where the information's at. We've been grinding on this now for a couple of years now. We can just cinch down on what we can and, and we're looking at all options and just close the gap and move forward.
And tonight was not the rates and fees
No.
hearing.
Okay, well, that's what I was going with. It's more information. Thank you. If we're supposed to be like kind of pseudo deciding something tonight.
This
Okay.
was all informative. It's, and
Okay.
we cover this stuff.
The 13th will be the rates and fees.
Okay.
Hearing,
That's the big one.
Okay,
where you will be deciding.
okay.
Let's move into the Alkire.
I think this is probably determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiation rather than legal advice. Might also be legal advice, but I think that that's probably where we're trending.
I think it's a little bit of both, because
And I'm almost sure the threat of a lawsuit there.
Not against us, I don't think.
Well, okay, he was saying he was gonna go against liquid, but still.
because I don't want to talk about this without legal advice. I believe we are in a legal, not with him.
Right, okay. Need a motion in a second. To go
I
into-
motion to go into executive session. Yeah, we were,
Second it.
You move to add it to the.
oh,
agenda.
okay. So we have a second, Director Hooks, discussion. No discussion, all in favor of going into executive session for the purposes of legal advice and negotiation for 1078 South Alkire. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Todd. Todd
Yes.
Hooks gave the second. Discussion? No discussion? All in favor of the motion? Say aye. Aye. We have 5-0 nays. We will now move into executive session.
As the district's attorney, it is my opinion that the discussion of the matter announced in the motion to go into executive session constitutes a privileged attorney-client communication. I am therefore recommending that no further record be kept until the executive session has been concluded, which will be conducted pursuant to CRS 24-6-402 sub 4 sub B and sub E echo. I'm recommending that the tape recorder be turned off now. The time is 8:25. The time is now 9:52. And I have restarted the recording because the attorney-client communication is finished. The executive session has been concluded. The participants in the executive session were Board of Directors, District Manager Jeff Tyus, and General Counsel for the district, Dylan Woods. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into the executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask that you state your concerns for the record. Seeing none, the next agenda item is District Manager Performance Review.
I make a motion, we go into executive session for the district manager performance review. Second,
I will say.
we have a second from Director Hooks. Any discussion?
So this is an executive session for personnel matters under CRS 24-6-402 sub 4 sub F. Jeff Tyus, as the district manager, the identified person subject to the personnel matter executive session, you may request that the executive session be held as a public session instead of an executive session if you like.
I like executive session.
Okay, so any further discussion? No discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. We have 5 ayes, 0 nays. The motion passes. We will go into executive session.
Okay, the district has voted to convene in an executive session. For the record, I'm Dylan Woods, General Counsel for the district. Also present at the executive session will be the Board of Directors and Jeff Tyus, District Manager. To satisfy the open meetings law, this executive session is being electronically recorded. I caution each participant to confine all discussions to the stated purpose of the executive session and that no formal action may occur in the executive session. Jesse, would you stop the recording just for your marker, and then we'll restart it. I hereby attest that the electronic recording reflects the actual contents of the discussion of the executive session and has been made in lieu of writing minutes to satisfy the reporting requirements of the open meetings law. District will retain the recording for a 90-day period and then destroy them. The time is now 11:55, 10:55. And we now conclude the executive session and return to the open meeting. The executive session has been concluded. The participants in the executive session were the Board of Directors, myself, General Counsel for the district, and Jeff Tyus, General District Manager. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matter is not included in the motion to go into the executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I ask that you state your concerns for the record. Seeing none, the next agenda item is
New business. Notifications for next board meeting. Director with me, you said you.
Well, yeah, I was just noticing next meeting, of course, is the budget and lots of busy stuff. So as far as trying to get my head ready to go, I just want to follow up on some things. Number one, are we going to be talking about the Solterra IGA? I know it's coming, and we were talking about doing a new IGA or whatever, coming up with some new rules.
Yes. I'm gonna be circulating a revised draft probably tomorrow.
Okay.
For your review.
And my assumption is, I think what we talked about last time was that we wanted to renew the IGA so that they can continue to get service. But we were not interested in giving them any additional, what was the words, allocation?
EQRs,
Yeah, reservation.
EQRs, additional taps.
Yeah.
And that is that's the basis of the revised version.
Okay. And the reason obviously, I believe in that, and that's why I want to go. I'm just wondering, have they got any sense that that's coming? And if not, I don't think they're gonna be happy with this, but of course, I don't care. But are they gonna go berserk and start throwing lawsuits at the December meeting and stuff like that? I'm just kind of wondering, is this meeting gonna blow up in any with those folks?
I doubt that they will be particularly happy with the revision. I'm probably going to send it to their attorney also, just to get a head start on things. But probably the January meeting is going to be the more contentious meeting, since it doesn't expire until the middle of January anyway.
Okay, so you're expecting fireworks in January?
No, but I'm not expecting them in December.
Okay. Okay, then we got the budget coming up, the tap fees. We sort of talked about tap fees tonight, but I'm not really clear. Do we have?
We had a percentage based on the ENR. And we are going to, post that out. That's what was posted, that we're gonna be at this next board meeting. We will be voting on increased tap fees based on the ENR.
Okay, I don't know, it's inflation.
It's an inflation and engineering type inflation that reflects what's happened here with the
Okay.
district.
Off the top of my head, without looking at the numbers, that I have some idea what.
18%.
Okay, good. Happy with that. Good job. Then let's see, the next thing that we got is the budget, which is then, of course, the rate, or the rates and stuff like that. I think the last time I saw there was a budget that came out that I guess was kind of a draft. And we had some conversations about a lot of things like, raises and stuff like that. But when it's all said and done, is that last draft what we're planning on voting on?
Yes.
Okay, off the top of my head, I want to say it was looking like a 7 or 8% increase as far as the actual water rates or things like that.
There was gonna be the pass-through rates, and then we were gonna have an increase on the actual. My brain's totally fried. That 10%'s down to 0 now. Service charge,
Yeah, which isn't very much. So the monthly charge is only going to go up so many cents per month, but the cost per 1,000 gallons was going up where the average bill would be like 7 to 9%. But it's broke down like I'll read forward. It's called version 2.2. So it's 2023 version 2.2, and I can forward it back to you.
So the one thing we have to pass through things from Denver Water Metro Waste. And then we are gonna take the thing and trying to increase our capital savings by $1 million. So whatever that came out to is what the rate increase will be.
$1 million, because that's the part I don't remember. All right, so, because I know I've been visualizing, we've been talking a little bit about putting some reserves for replacements in the future.
That was the first blush at trying to.
And that was, we talked about 8 million and stuff like it, it was really wide. And at this point, we're looking at doing $1 million that is put in the bank for replacement reserves. In the
So we have an annual spend rate of around like 3 million or something like that.
Yeah, so the capital budget for next year is 4.9 million. And then we're proposing to raise the cost per 1,000 gallons to cover a little over $1 million of that.
Can I suggest you just take a look at the budget again.
It's the same-
I'm not prepared, nobody's prepared to be talking about budget right now.
It's the same thing, it hasn't changed.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah, I could email to you again. It's on our website.
No,
too.
I've got it, but like I say, it's been a couple months now and,
Well, we're voting on it this next board meeting, so
Okay.
I'll be making a motion to pass.
nothing different than what I've already got. Okay, very good. I just want to be prepared for next time.
So the final thing is we need to decide if, on the performance or any pay increase for Jeff Tyus's. That needed to be done in public. So I'll start with you.
You're asking for the 2% inflation and anything above that, or
Yeah.
nothing at all, anything in between,
Nothing all the way up.
3.8.
Hey, Todd,
Yes,
for Jeff Tyus, performance rating. Percentage,
I will go with the 2 plus 2.2 of a 4.2.
I thought 4 was the limit.
No,
What's,
First down.
no, two, we just, right?
wait a minute, then I gave the wrong number. What's the total scale? 4%, correct?
We budgeted 4%, but we didn't, that was that whole discussion. Somebody could get 10% and somebody could get 0. So if you would like to do 4.2%, it just comes out of somebody else.
he's on his own island, so.
So he'd be entitled to a maximum of 4%.
No, he can go all the way to.
20%.
Yeah, go infinity.
If we have the budget for, we have a 4% pot over all of the staff.
Oh, okay, I withdraw my previous number
Okay,
and let me go last, because then I have to recalculate this in my mind. My apologies, I thought 4 was the limit.
okay, Todd, you were 4.2,
Correct.
okay, Dave,
Oh, you know, me out in the middle of the road.
you guys are killing me.
I know.
You guys are directors.
Well, you know me, I don't want to shake the boot. 4 or 5% is fine with me,
What is it?
4.5.
Okay. Karen,
I'm at 2. And I can't imagine giving our newest manager highest paid, so if we give him a 4 or 5, and we didn't give everybody else. I don't know what everybody else is getting. But that
Okay.
will come out of their budget, so
Okay.
I'm at 2.
All right, I'll go with 3.5 then. Yeah, I'm easy to work with.
yep, I'm gonna be at the 2% also, because, when we brought you in, we had to go above and beyond. What we had marketed out there, and it's no. Reflection on your performance, other than this is a baseline year for you, and, I would just give you I would give you what I would consider probably the minimum for this year, because we're in a baseline. And we did exceed, when we hired you. So we have, now Roger, I'm back to you.
Yeah, I think there's an error here. When we discussed this for the regular employees, 4% was the maximum anybody could receive.
Not true.
Actually, yes, because Mr. Tyus and I discussed it during the meeting, and he suggested that all of his employees were performing adequately, some far exceeded expectations. Those employees would receive 4%, other employees would receive maybe 2.1%.
I specifically had a motion to cap it, and I didn't get a second.
I thought we capped it at 4%.
Did not cap it. We
This
have a
makes it
cap,
really difficult.
we have a cap on the overall pot, so we gave him a pot of 4% of the employee's salary to do with what he will.
Mr. Tyus, how did you interpret it, or how are you going to distribute these monies?
Yeah, so it is true, Director Morgan tried to cap it, but there wasn't a vote, so we were going to distribute it in decimals, so some people could get, 3.2, 3.8, 4.2, but or 3 or 2.8. So So it's gonna range based on performance, but it's not gonna be a really wide range. You know, it could range from 2 to 4.6 or something.
Okay. I apologize. I
At the
thought
best,
we-
you know, yeah.
I guess I was in a different meeting. I'll go with an even 4.
Okay, so we have a 4, 4.2, 4.5, 2.0, 2.0.
No, there was a 3.5 from Dave, not 4.5.
It was 4.5.
Didn't I say 4.5?
Talking about me?
Yeah,
Well, I said 4.5, but then I folded and went with 3.5. Mr. Conciliation, I compromised.
3.5. So Roger, 4.0, Todd, 4.2, Dave, 3.5, Karen, 2.0, Jeff, 2.0.
So what's the average?
You're the.
Here.
I don't have a calculator. I have to walk across the room.
What do we
3
have?
point something.
2 plus 3.5 plus 4. 2.
It's 15.7.
3.14.
It's pi, Dave. Okay, so if we go with the overall average, we're at 3.14. Is anyone prepared to motion? I make a motion to approve the performance increase of 3.14% for Jeff Tice.
I will second it.
Dave Wickman seconded. We have discussion.
Yes, it's too low. He'll have, most of his employees will be receiving a larger percentage than that.
Okay.
So I don't know how I can convince the 4 of you.
About 3.5.
And not only that, it's not a matter of how it appears. The other employees, in my opinion, he's done a great job under difficult circumstances.
My only contention is when we, like I said, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, other than when we hired Jeff, we had to bring in additional funds to match the offer. And when you're in your first year, it's a baseline for me. So I'm gonna be standing firm where I was at.
Fair enough.
I agree.
And it's nothing against Jeff whatsoever. I told him he's done an outstanding job. But it's still a baseline year. Now I can know what to measure off of.
So is pi the word?
Pi is what's on the table.
Okay.
Todd?
I'm good with 5.
Okay. Any further discussion? No further discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have 3 ayes, all against, say nay.
Nay.
We have 2 nays. The motion passes. 3.14 merit raise for Jeff Tyus. 3 yeses, 2 nos.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Is that a merit raise? Is that on top of the 2% COLA
No, that's just all up thing there.
inclusive?
That's the all inclusive, that's it. So, okay. Any other further new business? Anything for the next meeting?
Yes. Did you look at anybody else first?
I was
Do we
hoping
still
get
need
out
to
here by
do-
midnight.
We still need to do a motion for committee members.
We already did that.
We did.
Yeah, just identify the committee members. Committee members will be Jeff Baker and Karen Morgan.
Yeah, unless anybody else wants to jump in.
Well, we can't do that because we got a form, so that's not.
Well, no, I could step out, somebody could step in.
Does anyone else, would anyone else rather than Karen like to be on this committee? Dave looks like he
Okay.
wants to.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed that you guys have my spirit, that you're gonna go
That's
out
what
there.
that beeping noise was. That's a bus backing up over us, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Oh, did you have another item?
yes. I would like to put on the agenda for next meeting to talk about a new district engineer process.
This above and beyond these one or two that we just hired.
So our district engineer right now is Merritt. And they take on
What about that
all these,
JVA.
JVA?
JVA was hired specifically for wastewater.
Well, that's not our engineer.
Yeah,
So you want to get our engineer.
yep,
Okay.
somebody else to, yeah, so go through all of those,
And you think it'd be somebody other than JVA? Can't Merit?
no, just something to talk about, it could be JVA, could be, yeah, I just like to talk about it.
Okay, well,
And also, did anybody here listen to the city council meeting last night
if
with
As
the,
long as I could endure it.
with the water thing on Kipling?
Oh, so Jeff, this is important. This actually came. It was a rando type comment, but it was worth bringing up. Somebody, and it's not in our district, but there was a Denver water main off of Kipling near Iowa. I think that
Florida, yeah,
Florida and Iowa Street. That they had shut down. They've been going through like months-long process. There's some sort of a Denver water contamination line down there. Something in the lines. So they're teed up.
yeah, I'd just like to, if you could check in on that, because I don't know what's going on with the lines, if it has any, if it's coming down Kipling, if it has any crossover, if there's something going on.
We're in the meetings.
It was right in the discussion of the gun stuff. I mean, it was public comment,
Public comment?
so it went everywhere. So you had,
Yeah, I listened to all the public comment. I don't, okay.
Yeah, he said it was 4 o'clock last night, 200 people were out of water all of a sudden.
yes,
And the-
unannounced and nobody notified them and their water was shut down. And this has been going on for, they've been doing some sort of remediation down there for months and then they flat out didn't have any water.
Right, yeah, I remember that comment.
And Denver Water can't certify it, they're having all sorts of problems and people are getting sick and I don't know what's going on, but if there's.
If under Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment Regulation 11, if you have negative pressure for more than 100 customers, it's a tier 1 violation where you have to issue a boiling water alert because it contaminated, everything's contaminated. So that's why you gotta be careful with, water main breaks. We can't shut off very many people. So I'll look into it and see if that's what would happen where
I don't know if
They
that's
hit
Clover.
they hit 0 PSI, negative pressure, 0 PSI, then it's a
backflow.
backflow, it's a backflow.
Just making sure it's
Cross
across the
connection.
street from us.
Cross connection. Exactly.
And one more agenda item. Can we explore a way during the next meeting to compel the city of Lakewood to somehow work more closely with us, give us warnings, advance notice or something? It's something we can kick around, have a closer relationship with them or something.
We can't. We have been trying, the Ravine Bridge was a good beta monkey.
Like meet with the mayor, or I have no idea.
Yeah, put it on the agenda.
I volunteer, Roger.
Right, I can't
Wow.
put you. Second, done.
Okay,
Not it.
It's there, yeah, I mean, we can talk about it. It's not, I know we have talked about it before. Maybe you'll come up with a.
The good thing to
A
do
good
would
tip.
probably
I don't
be to have a liaison that actually goes down literally and walks in there. On the issues, we have outstanding issues, maybe we make that an agenda item, outstanding issues. That the liaison will walk into Lakewood and say, what are you doing?
And seriously,
City
I think it
manager
ought to be you, Roger. The rest of us have a lot of baggage,
baggage.
so
or let's make it an agenda item.
I'm on a no-fly list down there, so. I think.
I don't
that's a good
mind,
idea.
except
So
I'm-
can you put that on the agenda, look at, discuss, liaison for City of Lakewood with probably Roger being the liaison. And we would just, and to expand on that, because we'll forget everything by then, it's to take the current talking points of the district down to the City of Lakewood.
I don't mind doing it. The only problem is I normally work evenings till 8 o'clock at night. I usually take Tuesdays off for this. So I could do it, but I'd have to either meet with them in a day or do it by telephone or something.
It would probably be with the city manager and you would probably wanna. If this happens, you would probably wanna establish some sort of relationship or email cadence with her.
All right,
Would you
well,
agree with that?
Well, the city manager, of course, is the first choice. Second choice might be Adam. I'm not sure if that would be of any value or not.
I would go with the city manager and then I would do it on emails like he says, that way you have a record.
I'd pop down there and meet him, of course.
It's
All right, let's finalize it as an agenda item and discuss it. This is for our meeting in 2 weeks, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, any other?
I once again forgot to bring up the 360 interviews for manager. To do reviews. Any interest in that, to put it on the agenda to talk about a process for that?
For what?
It-
I'm at 0% brain capacity.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
You're gonna have to really talk slow.
As part of your review process, you do,
Is it interview process?
yes,
That's the quarterly thing we
Okay.
talked about earlier, and we decided that it would go to a mid-year, or do you want it back at quarterly?
I want to include at some point. Reviews from all sides, it's the 360, you do reviews from under and over and sideways, so you'd ask his employees how he's doing.
Do you want that quarterly or annually? Or biannually?
Do I have to be there by law? How does that work?
No, you do.
By law.
We'd have to set up a process, so if there's any interest in that. we'd
But
have
if
to
the
put it on
board's
agenda and
involved?
figure it out.
How does that?
If there's more, yeah.
We'd have to set up a committee,
Yeah, I think anyway, you're just proposing that it be an agenda
Yes.
item,
Okay,
not discussing.
okay.
right,
Anything else?
okay,
You're good?
yes.
Are you good?
Think so.
Are you good?
It's-
Are you good, Todd?
Yes.
All right, I motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second,
Discussion? No discussion, all in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
I
Aye, we have 5 ayes, 0 nays. Meeting is adjourned at 11:19 PM.
No, I vote no. I want to keep talking.